Okay. Welcome to Head of the Charles. My name is Andrea Proska, and I'm so pleased to be here with you. Hopefully one of the 400,000 spectators that we have joining us for this historic event. It's been running since 1965. We're expecting over 11,000 athletes representing 26 nations in 67 events and 2,600 boats. And what I love about this course is that at 3 miles long, well, it really is a coxswain's course. And of course, that's why we have the experts here with us today. And I'm sitting right next to Hudson. And Hudson, you run a podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. My name is Hudson Forster. I run the Four Stars podcast, a rowing podcast for all people. And I'm super excited to be here today.
Yes, and we're going to start off the event with the men's championship double. Tons of events coming down the course today. You can't perhaps see it on your screens once we cut to the footage, but it is a little bit wet out there today, which I always liked because if there's rain, it's usually a little bit calmer on the water.
Yes, and we can hopefully expect a nice rainbow if we can get that here in Boston. But yes, the water is rolling pretty well, and I'm super excited that everyone's here and enjoying themselves as well.
So maybe worth mentioning a little bit about why this event is special. It certainly is not a straight course, and as a former athlete myself, 2K specials were what I was after, straight and long, but now these at 3 miles we go through 6 bridges. So that's why we're saying it certainly is a coxswain's race. Have a beautiful view here of the women's club eights before we go to the men champ double with Massachusetts, MIT coming down the course.
MIT, they are the Boston natives here, along with Harvard and Boston and Northeastern.
And you can see there the athletes coming down on the far side, spectators lining the bridges. That's something that's very special about this event, is that you have cheering the entire way down. Most athletes are only really used to the last 250 meters, and we don't get cheers until we get to the grandstands. But it's a different experience here. And Hudson, I know this is your first time at Boston. Tell me a little bit about what it was like walking down the course.
Honestly, it's walking through history. You can never go wrong with being here at the Charles River. So many people talk so much about it and how amazing it is and how the experience is one of a kind. And I believe that people who come here, they want to lay it down and do what they can do.
So we're looking right here at the women's 8. That was my boat as well. I was right there in the middle in the powerhouse. So you can see the coxswains here can be in either side. The coxswains in the 8s are tucked into the stern of the boat. They get to have the competitive advantage, unlike uncoxed boats, of seeing where they're going and helping to steer through those 6 bridges right there. Great shot at the back there. An 8 is such a technical boat to race. You have to get 16 legs down together, 8 blades together as one.
100%. And Matt Coxon's job is to keep everyone in sync. And if one person falls out of sync, there could be some chaos. So we always want to make sure as coxswains that our crew is composed and level and calm and making sure we're adding in that pressure as time goes on.
And you do that with the help of a microphone, is that right?
Certainly. Thanks to NK, they give us the best quality microphones connected to our Cox box, which is our GPS, showing us the split, so our average 500 meters, as well as our stroke rate. Now, the stroke seat, as you can see, the individual right in front of the coxswain their job is to make sure that they're keeping the cadence, right? And 7 seat, right behind the stroke seat, is what I like to say, the strokes lieutenant. And then you can add in some other people as we get to the middle 4, and then obviously our bow pair, right, to the person at the other end of the coxswain.
Well, shortly we'll be going from the women's club 8s to the men's championship double, and many of the top finishing crews from last year are returning this year with Andrew Raito and Thaddeus Babik will be on our screens any moment here. There were 6 in 2022, but their bow won today, so worth mentioning. Look at those tassels. Very festive. Makes me think I'm at the Calgary Stampede. What is the advantage in a time trial of going off first?
Well, when you're off first, you only have to worry about yourself. You're going off first, the rowers can see what's going on in front of them, right? So they can't see behind them. That's the coxswain's job. So once you go off first, you can see the whole playing field. And my coach used to always tell me that if you get in front, stay in front. Definitely don't want to fall behind. So stroke seats can communicate that to their coxswain if they find some energy throughout the race course. that there's boats approaching and whatnot.
Yeah, that's what I love about rowing. It's one of the few sports where you can see the people that you're beating, and in these time trial formats, you really have a great idea of where the other competition is, or at least the ones that are second and third behind you. So these boats are set off 15 seconds apart from each other, and that's regardless of boat class. So as we can imagine, the faster the boat, the easier it is to make up those 15 seconds. And when you get alongside another boat, well, then that's where tactics come into play. You need to figure out how to get past them.
Yes, and coxswains have to put out the tricks that they have in the bag, as we say. So make sure that you're coming to the course with a lot of tricks in the bag, and as well as talking to your crews beforehand. Some athletes like to have certain things to say in the boat to get them riled up and to keep them on pace. So as coxswains, our job is to use our mental strategies to keep our rowers in line and make sure that we're all staying in tune.
Another beautiful view of Boston here. We're so lucky to be on these historic waters, and worth mentioning as well that this weekend we enjoyed the land and row in the waters of the territory of the Massachusetts Pawtucket and their neighbors, the Wampanoag and the Nipmuc people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial. And this is certainly a very special place to see some of the best in the world.
Yes, and here we have Princeton University, bow number 36 in the Women's Club 8s. Princeton had a wonderful year this past spring, coached by Lori, and she did a fantastic job with her crew, making sure that they did a great finish at NCAAs this year as well.
Look at those boats together. You're talking about the tricks that coxswains pull out. What was one of your favorite?
That's a discussion in of itself. Tricks out of my bag. My coach used to always tell me that if you always have something to say, say it. You definitely don't want to be silent, unless it's due for silence. But yes.
And we're riding here right now with bow number 12, the men's championships double, with Corey Rogers and Christopher Back representing Next Level Rowing. 16 from Canada. Well, I can't miss an opportunity to shout out these two, although I see it's Union Boat Club, so 15 perhaps. Sam Ford and Grant Eberts. This is the first time this lineup has ever raced together. What a place to have your first race.
That's a story to tell your kids. Oh my gosh.
And we'll zoom in here. There we go. The 16, that's looking more like the Delta Ds. And if my eyes don't deceive me, that's Mark Henry, Andrew Todd. They're both Team Canada. I actually trained with Andrew, who is a Paralympian and a 2016 Rio bronze medalist in the PR3, here racing as an able-bodied with Mark Henry, a national team athlete.
Yes. Middlebury College, bow number 19, pulling through here, coming across the bridge, as we see here at Riverside.
Yeah, Thomas in this won the event in 2019, placed second in 2022 and third in 2018. And Nathan also won this event in 2018. That must give so much confidence to have raced this course before, to know what the good lines are. And as we zoom out here, you can see you side-by-side racing in a time trial format. Wow, what a great shot. Doesn't this give you a great appreciation for how close the racing is?
Yeah, there's no buoy lines to keep you in check as well. When you're in a 2K, you have these lines to look over and make sure you're staying in tune and in track with the race. But here we have everyone just going, and they're doing whatever they can to just make sure they try to find their point. And that bow seat is doing the best job to look over every maybe 3 to 5 strokes, making sure they don't clash blades with other boats around them.
You're right. No coxswains in this. So typically in a two-boat, I also raced the double for a number of years for Canada. The bow seat will be in charge of the line, the course, and then stroke. Less likely in a double that they'll have steering installed in the boat, but they will communicate to the stroke whether or not they need to move, a little bit harder on port, a little bit harder on star. Riding here with Riverside, this is Amel Eunice and John Mannion. They won this event last year and decided to run it back.
They have to run it back. Anytime you get an opportunity to row at the Charles River at the head of the Charles, take it, because you never know when it could be your last.
I love the Riverside blades, hey? So unique. They always stand out. And you can see a little bit of rain coming down here. Look out from Star. They're doing a decent pressure here. We don't have our stroke coaches on us, but keeping the pressure up, and that's what you have to do. Even though you're steering, keeping your foot to the gas is tempting sometimes, especially coming off of a turn, to go, oh, I just navigated, a tough course. I just got through through a bridge. That gives you an appreciation of the rain there, that shot. Thank you, cameraman.
Yes.
But you have to really keep your foot on the gas for the entire 3 miles, which I was told, if you do the exact right line, is only 4,702 meters.
Wow. To the exact pinpoint as well. Setting up your Cox box as well to the 4702. It's making sure you're following that. Hopefully no one goes over.
This is a Penn from Philadelphia, Michael Herman and Cedar Cunningham, bow number 6. Great combination. And I believe that Michael was in the Coastal World Rowing Championships only a couple weekends ago, placing 7th. We also have an international combination with that bow number 7 out of Monaco and the U.S. Jamie Kupis, actually three countries here, because Jamie is actually a dual citizenship, just came over from GB and is trialing for the U.S., whereas Quentin is from Monaco.
Wow. We talk about the fact that GB had a wonderful finish this year at Senior Worlds. They finished first at Senior Worlds as well in the men's 8. Harry Brightmore coxed that boat down the race course well. It was wonderful, one of a kind. And so I'm excited to see if we can get crews coming over here and seeing if they can row for the America.
And here we have a beautiful overhead shot. And I have to tell you, there are people lined all up and down this entire course. It really is like a party. People hanging out on the bridges, and the rain has not dissuaded anyone from coming out and from cheering. And if we're going to be cheering, well, let's cheer for number 11 here. This is a Gentle Giants. This is Harriet and Harrison coming out of ARSK or SR Scatty.
Wow, what a name.
So what we're looking here in a double, so there's 2 types of rowing for aunts and uncles who might be tuning in from at home. There's sculling and there's sweeping. This is sculling, which means that the athletes have 2 oars, 1 in each hand. We just saw bow number 13 there.
Yes, we did. Now, I have to talk to you about something, Andrea, because first of all, sweep rowing is a totally different rowing stroke than sculling, as you all know. Andrea did pinpoint that there is obviously sweep, which is 1 oar for the rowers, and in sculling there is 2. Most coaches at the junior level like to start off with sculling because you get a chance to understand boat feel and how important that is for us coxswains out there to have boat feel, especially when a bow loaded 4, making sure that we understand how the boat moves and having more understanding of technique as well.
So we're looking at those blades going straight into the water as an athlete. It's really important that you're not skying the blade, not dropping your hands too much, that you're keeping it nice and tight to the water, even when it's lumpy, as best as you can. And a little bit of creative steering here. This won't be the first or the last time we saw that, as Oklahoma navigates one of the 6 bridges here. Often when you're in the middle of the race and the lungs are going and the blood is pumping in your brain, it can be a little bit hard to also, on top of that, have to think about steering.
Certainly, yes. And that's why the bow seat has to make sure that they're staying and looking around at all the other boats around them, making sure that they take enough turns, have enough space so you don't crash into the bridges.
Another side-by-side here, look out of bow. Also looking for that bridge over his right-hand shoulder to make sure that they're trying to get an aggressive line. You're trying to get inside, but you don't want to lose that speed. And I can't tell you, I wish that we had audio recording of the sound that it makes when you go through the bridge. It all goes quiet. You can only hear perhaps the cheers and the sounds of the blades in the water going through with echo. There's nothing like it.
Certainly, yes, and especially you forgot to mention the fact of the slide going up and down as well. You hear that whooshing sound as you go up to the bow, and it is one of a kind.
Lane number 2 here, Riverside, Amel and John. Again, they won this event last year, and they're looking really strong together here, moving nicely through the water. Right behind them from GB, Windsor boys, Brian and Charlie. Brian is 23, Charlie is 20. They're looking like they're moving together nicely as well.
Yes, entering the blade at the same time, 2 inches above the water, as coach would like to say, to pinpoint when to enter the blade.
You might be able to see bow number 1 here from Andrew Ratio and Thaddeus Babiak. Thaddeus came 7th in men's coastal quad, and they were teammates together at Penn in 2022. How much of a difference does it make to know your teammate in a boat, Hudson?
You have that chemistry. You build up that chemistry all 4 years of college. And once you are able to go and take it to the next level, which in the United States obviously is a national team, you are able to go and row, hopefully with your teammates and other crews that you competed against while you were competing for IRAs. Here we have Leander. Now, Leander is a wonderful program out in the United Kingdom. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so Leander Boat Club, I actually rode with them for a while. And Leander, I might mention this again later on, but they actually have more medals than any sports club in any sport.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is
absolutely
fantastic.
Beautiful place to train out of. There they go underneath the bridge. They have the benefit, that international crew of Jamie Copus and Quentin Mon, to not have anyone next to them. So one less thing to focus on.
Yes.
Look at that crowd, too.
Yes, we do have Nick Mead coming up, who just won Male Athlete of the Year. What an outstanding award that must be to have, just to be able to say, wow, all these accomplishments and things that I've done, facing adversity and actually being awarded by that. You know, most of these awards are awarded by his teammates. So it's fantastic to see that his work paid off.
Also need to be mentioned that this men's pair that's going to come up is going to be an invitational event, but right now still riding with the championship double. There is a pair, the first of them,
Yes.
excuse me, on your screen right now. While we were talking in the double about the difficulty with steering, right, not having a cox. Tell me a little bit about why it might be different in a pair.
Wow. Well, in a pair, obviously, it's only a fourth of an 8, and so you only have the ability to be with your teammate. And any slight pressure, you have to work together. If you're not working together, the boat's not going to go the way you want it to go. And so in a pair, you're entering the blade only having 1 oar as opposed to a double with 2 oars. A little bit more consistency and stability when you're in a double. In a pair, you have to make sure your balance is good.
Now, I would imagine bow number 5 here well into the race. And this is probably where you're feeling the lactic acid, right? You've gone through a couple of turns. You're in the home stretch, as it were. You have to dig in, keep going. And really that comes down to strategy. Making sure that as you go through your race plan that you start out nice and strong, but not do something I was always a pro at, which is a fly and die.
Wow.
You know much about the fly and dies? Maybe you can explain it to our rowers or to our viewers.
Yes, a fly and die essentially is you go off the starting line, and this race is a head start, so you're going off at a staggered start, and you go up to the line, and you're just going 100% full pressure, and then middle of the race, you die off. The pressure, the energy, you lose it, and that's essentially a fly and die.
Nice, strong finish here from University of Calgary Rowing Club. Worth noting that in Calgary in Canada does freeze 6 months out of the year, so they'll probably be going back to colder and colder temperatures. Might be one of the last international events for this combination of the year.
Yes, bow number 10, Oklahoma City, going right through the bridge, making a nice turn, looking around that bow seat, looking. And we have Middlebury College, bow number 19.
Followed by 18. And this is really underneath the bridges. You want to focus on steering, but we were walking the course the other day. I was walking with Lee Heyman. Lee is a very famous coxswain, well known in this town. He has actually lost count of how many times he's done this event. He estimates 25, but he certainly won at 8. And he said of those 25 or so times that he's only really nailed the turn at the Weeks maybe 5 or 7 times where he feels like, yeah, that was good. So that tells you how unpredictable the waters can be, how different the stream can be, and how even the best of us have a little bit of trouble getting that line.
Yes, the Charles River is capricious. You never know what you're going to expect, and that's why you have to have a race plan. And as Andrea said, this is a coxswain's race. Coxswains have to make sure that they're following by the race plan as talked by with their coaches and their rowers.
So tell me a little bit about what race plan means to you. So as an athlete over a 2K race, I would have it broken down into 250-meter stretches. I would probably have either a technical focus or a mental focus, and I would really distill what I'm trying to do in that 250 meters down to 1 or 2 words. Now, part of the coxswain's job is to communicate that race plan to the team, right? And so what type of work goes into creating a race plan?
A race plan takes time, and that's why you have to make sure you have enough preparation. And so the race plan is basically there for you to follow, right? You're not always going to get it all the time, but you use it as a resource to where if you are 1,500 meters in and you are bow to bow with a boat, you understand or have to do maybe adding in a power 10 to shift or any ratio shifts to making sure that you keep it going. You never want to stop in a rowing race. It's consistent. So here we have bow number 1 of the men's elite pair with Olsen.
And already with overlap to bow number 2 there. So there's only a couple of competitors. This is a men's elite pair. This is an invitational event. Those blades coming awfully close to the other boat there.
Let's see if the bow man can move away.
And there can be time violations for a failure to yield, although it looks like bow number 1 was hemmed in, doing his best to try and stay out of that Spanish combination. Riding here with bow number 4, U.S. rowing Nicholas Mead and Alex Karawaski. Nick was in the men's 8 for Tokyo, and Alex was in the men's 8 for Rio, going from the biggest sweep boat to the smallest.
Oh, my. Now, right now, if I was in that boat, first, I'd be excited. I'd be ecstatic that I was actually being invited in this boat. Now, Nick Mead here, he's trying to really show off why he was given that U.S. Rowing Male Athlete of the Year. This is where it comes in clutch.
So these pairs races can be tough. We touched on it and hinted to it a little bit earlier, and that, and actually worth noting that this is a Ukrainian combination on our screen right now. There will be final in the World Championships coming 10th in the men's 4. But I always explain rowing kind of like walking on a tightrope, and our oars are our balance beam, except in sweeping, which is when you have 1 oar in 2 hands, your partner has the other half of the balance beam. So if you're going to turn around and bow and take a look, you have a higher risk of upsetting the run of the boat, the balance of the boat. So this is really where skill comes into play. And this invitational is such an exciting event because this is usually where we see, actually everyone in this event is going to be from a respective national team. We have 1, 2, 3 USAs, a Ukrainian, and a Spanish combination. Usually we'd expect to see more people in this category, but this is a special year. We've got pairs coming up, 279 days.
Oh, my. Now, let me tell you one thing, Andrea. The thing about pairs is that you have to work together. Now, I mentioned that before earlier, but if you're not working together, the boat rhythm is going to fall off, and that won't be a good race for you. So as pairs, you want to make sure that you're communicating well to your partner and making sure that you have a stable plan.
Right, you are. And I think one of the downsides is that you'll have to go online to take a look at what the actual results are going to be. But certainly in this combination, who I'm going to be watching for is bound number 1 in that elite pair. Maybe we'll have an opportunity to see them later on. Billy Bender and Evan Olsen. This is the men's pair from the World Rowing Championships from this year. They got to the A final, finishing fifth in the world. So we're expecting them to lay down a great race for us today.
Yes, they will be hopefully at the 2024 Paris Games.
And so let's talk a little bit more about the difference. So what makes Head of the Charles such a unique race, right? 3 miles long. We've already talked about that. But how does that change? How does your strategy or preparation change versus a straight 2K race?
Well, you have to add in a lot more meters, right? So you have to conserve your energy a little bit more. We have, obviously, the power stretch, which is through a power plant, those of you who didn't know. So right after you pass Riverside Boat Club, you're going through a power plant, right? So the pressure you have to go, it's upstream. So you're going upstream, which adds in a little bit more resistance to the boat.
Right, you are. And also worth noting that Head of the Charles, unlike a normal regatta where you perhaps have progression through, you have your heats, you have your semifinals, you have your finals, you have a couple chances to get it right. Perhaps, thankfully, you are only able to do it once. So with the exception of the Director's Challenge, which we'll be seeing one later on today, no one can go down the course twice. So it's just one kick at the can.
Yes, and that's the time you have to get it right. One thing at a time as well. If you're taking this course and doing many things at once, it's not going to fall your way. So you want to make sure that you're doing one thing at a time, staying with your partner and making sure you're falling together.
And here we go to the women's championships doubles. Well, many of the top crews are not claiming their top seeded bow numbers from last year. That's exciting because really this means it can be anyone's race. But the person who got bow number 1, well, that's Riverside, Chloe Lewis and Megan Coombs, who called themselves two gals who reached too much at the catch after years with rowing with people bigger than them. Not unusual. We do see smaller statures in the women's doubles. I'm 6'1", and I remember being at International Grottas and in the women's doubles, definitely being one of the tallest people. But that Riverside combination is certainly a powerful one. We also we'll see later international competitors from Great Britain, New Zealand, and even Uganda.
Wow, that plenary must have been one of a kind.
Lane number 4, MIT, coming down the course here as we also kick back to the men's elite pair invitational. They're coming through the turns here, turns in a pair. So you will have the opportunity, unlike the doubles. Doubles typically don't have steering in them, but in a pair, in order to help compensate for the power, because of course the person on port has to be rowing the same length or producing the same amount of power as the person on starboard.
Sure.
They have an opportunity to put in steering. Can you tell us a little bit about what steering is like without a coxswain?
Right, so some boats have the ability to have a foot plate where you're actually able to move the boat with your feet. Now you might think, well, my feet are actually locked in the shoes and I can't do that. Well, in a bow seat, especially in those pairs, you have a way to move the boat with your feet. So yes, that is how you do it. And as well, power output, communicating with your other partner, how to move around is what you have to do if you don't have a foot plate.
And what happens if you apply too much pressure on one side versus the other if you're not able to match your partner?
The boat's going to go all the way around the plate. It's going to be a circle if you can't keep it in a straight line.
Well, and especially on a race as long as this, I mean, cutting off meters, that's the most important way, easiest way to win, I would say, right? If you can make it a couple meters shorter. Sitting here with bow number 7 from the women's double. This will be the Gentle Giant, or pardon me, the unaffiliated, because we're now on bow number 14. And these are Rutgers alumni.
Wow, Rutgers men's rowing program once was a Division I varsity sport. Now they have a Division I women's varsity sport. The men's rowing program was bumped down to a club. Justin Price leading that women's varsity team, the Division I team, the Scarlet Knights. They are doing a great season this year, hopefully heading to NCAAs.
I love shots like this where you can almost throw a blanket over the field and cover several boats. I mean, the women's double, I can tell you from firsthand experience, is an incredibly tight field, and I had the opportunity to host the women's Dutch double not too long ago, who just snagged their ticket for the boat to Paris 2024. And I remember in 2019 in the B final, so that means spots 7 to 12, there was 6 boats within 1 second of each other, and she said this year it was even tighter. So in the double, it is an incredibly close field, and when we get to the international level, people are winning and losing by hundredths of a second. Of course, we're going to see larger margins than that today, won't we?
Yes, certainly. If anyone who's watching Eastern Sprints this past spring, we saw 1 second margins for the top grand final, and they were going sub 5:30. So talk about the closeness that you have to be. And that's when the last 250 meters is crucial, because you have to add in the pressure. And as rowing coaches say, empty the tank.
Empty the tank, absolutely. Go blind. Leave it all on the water. Another beautiful overhead shot of rainy Boston, Massachusetts. Take this moment to thank once again our 2,400 volunteers that we have. I mean, this regatta doesn't work without the people out there keeping us safe on the course, yelling at us when we're about to hit a bridge, and helping us with our boats up and down. It takes a whole community to make this event happen.
Yes, and as you mentioned, in the way beginning, there are 400,000 spectators here. I believe this is the largest rowing race. I mean, obviously it's the largest rowing race, but it's the largest spectator sport in Boston. As you know, there's obviously stadiums and fields to host other sport teams around. But here in the Charles River, everyone's circling the rivers and also on the bridges.
And we can see there that the rain isn't keeping people away. All the umbrellas on the bridges and the community showing up to cheer on the championships women's double. A ton of great talent that we see in this. Let's talk a little bit about that noise. What does it mean? What does it matter for an athlete going through a bridge and having those cheers?
Those cheers are going to propel you to keep going hard, keep on pushing yourself, because there's times when you get those voices in your head that tell you to stop, that this is too much, I'm exhausted, I can't keep going. But those cheers keep you pushing, and it keeps you reminding yourself of why you're here. Why are you spending all these months training for this event? And that's why those cheers are always beneficial.
So well said. Also can be incredibly distracting if you're not prepared for it. I'm thinking back to my own experiences at Henley Royal Regatta, going down the course, and no one had prepared me for the fact that there would be an Elvis Presley impersonator singing as I'm going down in the middle of my race. So sometimes things can happen that you're completely unprepared for. Here we are with White Marsh Boat Club. They like to call themselves Tubby and the Tiny Tank. That's Sophia and Audrey. They've been training partners for the last 2 years, and both made the national team the past 2 years. And they'd like me to mention that if anyone sees or hears this, to please bring them a beer or a milkshake on the dock. So I'm sure that's on their way, Audrey and Sophia, but they're looking really nice together. Blades going in, handles not dipping too much, nice and level. Back to that Riverside combination.
Riverside, that's a name you'll be hearing a lot this weekend. The hometown rowing club here on the Boston at the Charles River. So we have Riverside here, bow number 1, pushing through in the champ double.
Puddles looking nice and dark there. You want to get those blades just covered by the water, not going too deep. And then the blade gets anchored in the water, and you push past with those big legs, open up, pry with the body before breaking the arms. Of course, general misunderstanding about rowing is that it's all upper body, but that's not correct, right, Hudson?
No, not at all. People always think it's the arms, you have to have strong arms, but no, it's the body, it's the quads, it's the legs. The legs are going to propel you, and that's why we say, even though it's a high-intensity, low-impact sport, the rowing sport is essential for making sure you have strong legs to push you and keep you going.
Women's champ double from MIT, home course crew, this one. That's got to give a certain level of confidence that you know what piers to look out for, what bridges, what lines to take. You have an opportunity to practice that over and over again, but that's only one aspect of it, right? Fitness has to come into play too.
Yes, and MIT, a very, very smart school, as all the other schools here in Boston. We got Harvard, Boston, Northeastern, and Boston College, and some other ones as well.
I think I counted that these athletes will also not be going just through 6 bridges, but past 8, maybe 9 boat clubs as well. Tons of rowing talent in a very small stretch here. As we sit there, we just saw Olivia Farrer and Kara Setwick as well. Another fantastic combination. Kara has rowed 9 times for the U.S., is a 9-time U.S. national champion, 3-time with the U.S. national team.
Now we have the Radcliffe, Harvard Radcliffe, bow number 10, the champ double. That bow is looking around, trying to make sure she keeps her line, making sure that she stays on point. Now we have bow number 12, Boston University, the arch rival here on the Charles River. We have Caroline Burchette. She's a wonderful athlete. She's coming down the course right now, looking around, making sure that she's keeping a nice little point.
Those blades going in, you can see just a little bit of a splash. And if you look closely, well, you might see German colors on that combination. And that's because I believe that, and as I struggle through my notes here, this is a combination of USA and German athletes.
Bringing back to the 1936 Olympics, talking about the U.S. and Germany. Here we have Gentle Giant Rowing Club. These are some really interesting names, Andrea.
Yes. Well, we see so many different clubs. Let's see if I have this written down here. Perhaps not how many clubs. That's something that my elves will be able to find for me a little bit later. But 26 nations in 2,600 boats over 67 events. So when you think that everyone is only able to row once, wow, really impressive. Going here with Gordon College, Lucia and Tiana. They won the HOCR championships in the doubles just this year, and Tiana then represented the U.S. at the World University Games.
Wow. Let me ask you a question, Andrea. When you were rowing at the Olympics, what was going through your head to keep you pushing? Was it your coxswain, or was that internal motivation to keep you going?
Oh, what a great question, and I love that I'm being put on the spot with it. Really, I think that if you're heading out onto any race without a plan, your race is already finished. The second piece of advice I would give you is that it is about the process, not the outcome. And what I mean by that is you can't sit on the start line already thinking about the finish. You have to be in the moment. You have to know exactly what you need to do, because in order to get that gold medal, you have to have your best race. And from the best race, then you broke it down into your controllables. What can I control? What do I need to execute? And that all comes back to race plan, race plan, race plan. Sitting here, number 16 with the women's champ doubles. I love these doubles because there's just such an intimate partnership, as we'll see with the pair. This combination from New York University rode together for a year. Ruthie is in the 2022 and 2023 national team. Looking a little bit tired here, and we won't blame them whatsoever for that. This is a very long race.
Yes,
but they're still working together. Yeah, exactly. Still accelerating those handles into the body there. Look out of bow and bow number 3. They'll be running right towards the end here, probably putting in that final sprint.
Now, that final sprint, you have to really empty the tank. I mentioned it earlier. If you're not emptying the tank, then you had more juice to get out throughout the race course. So we want to make sure that at the end of the race, you're really, as you say, blind rowing.
And what's almost more important than sprinting is sprinting effectively, isn't it? Right? When you're under pressure, as we see a little bit of a geese interference here, we love a good outdoor sport. You can collapse, right? You can let the body fall in. But the most important thing when you're doing a sprint is to sit up, knees up, chest up, perhaps shorten the stroke just a tiny bit, making sure that you're being as effective as possible, rather than rowing from a place of pain, as tempting as that might be.
Yes. And one wise person once told me, that you guys be prepared for absolutely anything when you're rowing on any rowing course, because as you can see, here that there's geese. Now we bring it back to 2023 Henley Royal Regatta. Texas rowing was going right through the geese at their race. So that's right when you have to be preparing for the worst and preparing for other marine life as well.
Gabriella and Emma here, number 2 from Undine, Philadelphia, and Vesper, Philadelphia. In their bio here, they did mention how much they love rowing together. Very, very important to do that you really enjoy your partner, that you have good combination, you have good opportunity for conversation, because in the middle of this, you're not going to be able to talk to each other. You're not going to be able to make race calls. You kind of have to be on the same wavelength. And I know with my doubles partner, I mostly communicated through grunts, because in the last 20% of a race, you don't have time for words.
Sure. Yes. And as these crews prepare for this regatta, they always want to make sure that they're trying to improve at least 1% per day, whether that's in their technique, their communication, their team chemistry, whatever it is. Definitely want to go out there every day and do your best and not let out, because these crews out here are trying to push it and keep advancing against other crews. We see MIT right here at bow number 4 trying to push through as well to bow number 5, I believe. Is that Riverside crew?
Actually, that's bow number 1, Riverside crew. So
wow.
Thinking that these athletes are set off approximately 15 seconds apart, that means that they've made up over a minute on that leading crew. Well done to MIT. Let's hope that probably was a painful choice, but that's okay, and they'll feel a sense of pride when they cross the finish line.
Yes. Bow number 12, Boston University, the Terriers, the women's crew. Caroline Burchett, I mentioned her as well earlier in the day. Now we have Radcliffe coming in. Bow number 10, they're trying to advance on bow number 12, taking over earlier in the race. Now Radcliffe's trying to come back and take their spot.
Here's our unaffiliated crew, and I found my notes. Yes, Luisa Nierschulte has represented Germany, and Onyeka Oguasha has represented the USA, but this is their first time competing together in the world's largest regatta. So from the international stage, these elite athletes are coming together to beautiful Boston. And we often see this after the Olympics. I certainly came back here, and Boston, Head of the Charles, actually was my last race for Team Canada before I retired, and I couldn't think of a better way to go out.
B was your last race. What was going through your head at that current time?
the joy of rowing. And really, I think that there's no better place to celebrate than here at Boston. You just feel the love from the community, feel the energy from the community. And as fun as Tokyo was, and as amazing, as spectacular as a gold medal was, there's nothing like celebrating with the crowd, and Boston certainly provided that.
100%. We see two crews. We see, in Philadelphia, and we also see in Boston, the two, I would say, the most exciting places to row, obviously on Boathouse Row and here at the Charles River. So being able to row on arguably one of the best rowing events ever.
But I have to cut you off here and talk about this combination. We're into the women's elite pairs here, and this Australian combination is something else. Bao is an Olympic champion from Tokyo in the women's 4, and a stroke also an Olympian from Tokyo. They have gold medals in the World Cup 2 and 3, a silver medal finish at the World Championships just this year, qualifying the boat for Paris. This is a fantastic combination, and one that I'm so excited to see how they go. Followed closely by Team USA here, Kelly Relick and Molly Brugan. They were the women from the women's 4 in the World Rowing Championships.
World Rowing Championships this year were one of a kind to watch. If any of you were able to watch that race, you would know what I'm talking about here. Just the absolute urge to go and win and to put your team on the map is exactly what we want to see here at the USA.
And worth mentioning that the reason why that was such an exciting event is, of course, because Olympic and Paralympic berths were up for grabs for the very first time, with just one last opportunity to get punch a ticket to the Olympics coming up next year in the Regatta of Death, the final chance qualifying regatta that no one ever wants to go to. Looking here on your screen, another international crew. This is from the Spanish Federation, Aina and Esther. Aina was a 2016 Rio Olympian. Esther is a Paris hopeful here together. And dare I see perhaps a smile on the bow here of Esther, showing that she's actually having a little bit of fun here. They must be happy with how it's going.
And that's what we want. We want to have fun and also want to put in the work as well. We see the U.S. crew now trying to push their way as well.
Well, this field, too, is a small but mighty, only 5 crews, which means that you can practically taste your competition. They're so close to you, only 15 seconds apart, only a minute and 15 seconds between all 5 crews. And we can see here that it is already closing up as bow number 3. This is a Princeton combination that raced the lightweight pair at World Championships for the last 2 years on the national team. But here in the women's open elite pairs.
Now, what's so funny about the Princeton Training Center is that everyone's trying to come there and compete to go and be on the national team. And we see here that there was a lot of athletes coming in from Texas as well. We have Kate Nifton, who is a wonderful athlete. She is from Texas University, and she is here as well, competing in the Women's Alumni 8 with her crew.
Another beautiful shot of the amazing crews that are out here, or pardon me, spectators that are out here, friends, families, braving the rain to hoot and holler. And I heard a couple cowbells on the way down as these athletes come through. Right now we're on the last half of the women's double, heading into the women's elite pair, the international event, and another stacked event too. What must it feel like to come and race against literally some of the best in the world are showing up to Boston?
I mean, I would say Boston's a room of opportunity. You're always going to find a way to be better and to be in training with the best. So I believe that if you're coming ahead of Charles, you always want to give it your all. And remember that if you're around the best, you have to train like the best and be the best.
I love that. Absolutely. And also defining success too, right? There's only one person that gets that coveted medal, although there are medals for second and third. The iconic one struck in bronze, 2.5 inches wide, is only for the first place. And it's a pretty special thing to be a Boston ahead of the Charles champion, isn't it?
Oh, of course. I remember one of my favorite people in the world, Zeno Mueller, Olympic champion. He once told me, this race is one of a kind. You'll never forget it.
In these women's elite pairs, shell is really nice and light, only about 60 pounds. These shells are made out of carbon fiber. Yes. They're designed to do one thing and one thing only, which is go fast in a straight line backwards.
Yes. And that's the beauty of this sport, is that we're always improving. We're always improving on boats and everything like that. And we have wonderful people here from Hudson and King and Wentech here showing off today as well.
Yes, Fluid as well, who worth mentioning, one of the championship doubles from Canada that was competing. They're also here to do Fluid. It's really a personal choice with which boat you want.
Certainly, yes. Now we have Chris Carlson here in the men's champ singles, already bumping up. It's getting super fast. He's rolling here for the USA. Nice, firm catches there as he's adding in the pressure with the legs through the bow, looking around, having a nice steady rate.
Yeah, Chris Carlson, certainly a regular member of the U.S. men's eight since Tokyo. He won the championship eights in 2022, and despite his sweep background, is a very talented sculler as well, with a third and a second place finish in 2021 and 2022 respectively. So the question is he on track for gold?
Possibly. I don't know about that, though. Now you have bow number 3 and bow number 2 going at it. Battle power here. Bow number 2, I believe, is Thomas McIntosh, a name that you will hear throughout this race, as well as competing against Elliot Putnam.
Tom McIntosh from New Zealand, another athlete from the men's eight, Olympic champion from Tokyo, now in the single scull. From the biggest boat to the smallest, there is no overstating how hard that can be, and he raced to a bronze against fierce competition at the World Championship this year, already overtaking, it looks like, the USA Elliot Putnam, another fantastic sculler. Riding here, number 5, we have Boston Rowing Federation, Clark Dean.
Clark Dean, a name that you will hear. Sarasota native, rode at Harvard University. Staying here, rowing for HUBC this year. Actually, Clark is just a fantastic athlete. Olympia in Tokyo back in 2020. Clark is a one-of-a-kind guy and actually is running his own coaching.
Fantastic. Ben Davidson was on our screen. We'll come back to the men's singles, but first let's finish up the women's elite pair invitational riding here with the Spanish Federation. They had a fantastic start. We saw a little smile, so we'll look for a close-up and see whether or not they're still smiling. And you can see in the background there the athletes with their blades just across the buoy line. That is allowed. Everything up to your rigger can go across the buoy line, but if you have even your gunnels across anything more than your riggers, well, that's a 5-second penalty.
Yes. Now we have bow number 5 with the U.S. rowing entry here in the elite pair. Wow, the catches there are absolutely fantastic. Firm pressure. Well done.
Yeah, no surprise given that they're national team members with, multiple world championship medals. Too many to name in the seconds that we're given with each boat here.
Yes, and we have the U.S. Rowing Training Center, obviously in Princeton, like we mentioned before, but we also have one in California, rowing for California Rowing Club, which is actually located right next to the old boathouse where the University of California, Berkeley rowed back in the day.
Back to the men's championship singles here. Bow number 10, that will be Sam Melvin, who is a 2019 under-23 world champion in the men's lightweight single with his hometown from Huntington Beach, California.
Yes, and Sam did row for Columbia Lightweights back in the day, having a great career there. Then he went off and did wonderful things for the U.S. on the national level.
Andrew LaRue here. Bow number 11 was just on our screen. Great stroke rate from the athlete on the screen right there. Beautiful dark puddles. As I squint at the screen, can't tell what the bow number is. Well, my graphics here have better eyes than I. This is Cooper Tuckerman from Green Racing Project. He won the senior lightweight 2023 in Canadian Henley and was second at Head of the Charles in 2022 in the lightweight men's single, but here in an open category.
And that's the beauty of the open categories. You could be any weight to row, which is wonderful as well. San Diego Rowing Club, coming from California, as you all know. Bow number 13 here. And we have Tom Graves, the Graves family, a wonderful family, a very famous family with Peter Graves as well as John. John's now the coach of Dartmouth Women's Rowing, the head coach. Was once an associate coach for the heavyweight team. Now he's the head coach of the women's team now.
Little open shot here. The championship men's single scull is worth mentioning that this is an incredible event this year because not only do we have 2 Olympic champions competing in this event, but this is the very first time that we have a purse available. $10,000 to the first place, $5,000 to second place, $2,500 to third place. Last time that prize money was available at Head of the Charles was 22 years ago, and that was just for the 580-meter sprint. So this is the very first time in the regatta's history that prize money is available for a full stretch race. Exciting.
That must be exciting for the rowers as well. If you do well here, you're able to bring home some cash. That doesn't help. That sure does help all the athletes here running for the national team, as well. It's not a lottery-funded sport here in the U.S.
Bow number 1, Chris Carlson. Don't see anyone on his bow. I'm hoping that's a good thing for him. University of Washington, class of 19. Looking on track for gold right now, but of course you have no idea of knowing where the other athletes are around you. We do try and seed the fastest in the first half of the race, but he won't know how fast people behind him are, so you have to keep your foot to the gas for the entire 3 miles.
He's looking around trying to see if anyone passed him like he didn't see, but we do have Chris Carlson here putting in that firm pressure.
And looking like open water to the next boat. So hoping that he's in front there as we go to bow number 22. This is James Francis. He represented Team USA at the U23 World Championships twice. And his brother Trey convinced him to start rowing. That's how quite a lot of people get into this sport, is someone says over dinner, hey, you should try this thing called rowing. And I find that most rowers just fall into the sport.
Yes, here in the U.S., athletes do start a lot later than other crews internationally, so many of those athletes who are coachable and athletic tend to find their way in rowing, like you mentioned before. Elliot Putnam here, bow number 3 from New York Athletic Club. Sam Melvin also rowing for that organization as well.
And you can see here placing the blades and trying to keep those arms as straight as possible. The legs should be the first thing on. You're accelerating with the biggest muscle. He's certainly under pressure here with Thomas McIntosh. Taking a look at him and at the course. It's going to be interesting to see how these phenomenal athletes over 2 kilometers, how that translates to a very much not straight 4:7:02 course.
The amount of preparation you have to have for this race, you have to prepare for the worst. And I think that's one of the things that these national team athletes have, is they have experience.
And I have to tell you that the person on your screen right now, another Olympic champion, Paul O'Donovan from the Irish team. He is an absolute champion here. Olympic champion as well in the lightweight men's double. 5-time world champion, including this year. An absolutely charismatic sportsman. He has a love of rowing that shows through the camera. And I will be looking to him for that trademark Irish sprint.
California Rowing Club, again with Ben Davidson, bow number 6. There are a plethora of California Rowing Club athletes here competing in the Champ Single this year as well. Now, training with other crews from your own rowing program, right? So there are all these crews. Will Gonzalski pulling up here in the bow number 8. Will is a Brown alum. He rowed at the 2022 World Rowing Championships for under 23 category, placing 2nd against GB at the first.
So this is a beautiful shot here. You can see that there's something small attached to the feet, the foot stretcher of these athletes. They'll have something called a stroke coach, and the stroke coach tells us how many strokes per minute we're going, and also what our speed per 500 meters is. All great information to have, although perhaps a little bit demoralizing in a headwind. It will at least give you an idea of how consistent your rate is, so that in these long races you can make sure that you're where you need to be, and in keeping in your body pace.
Yes, and these single scorers have to be a coxswain as they're rowing, because they're in charge of the rate, they're in charge of the pressure, and that stroke coach and speed coach, as some might have, is a very important tool to have as well.
Number 11 here out of California, Andrew LaRue. Is a senior team in 2022 as an alternate at the World Championships, but also junior between 2014 and 2016, and a Princeton grad. Really love how he rows here, nice and level. He's keeping his chin upright, his eyes up too, and a fantastic finish here. This is number 12 from Cooper Tuckerman. Look at how he's accelerating the handles into the finish.
The amount of pressure you have to add into this sport is one of a kind. It's unlike any other sport out there, because it's only about you. It's your work that you put in. It's the amount of preparation that all comes into one final product, which is race day.
Bow number 13, Tom Pezic, a U.S. national team between 2007 and 2021. He was also at the 2012 Olympics in the men's pair. He's been on the team for 14 years, the amount of experience that he must offer to the U.S. national team.
Certainly. Now we have bow number 15 here from Riverside Boat Club. Now he's looking around trying to see if he can advance the other crews out there. Let's see if he can do that throughout the rest of this race.
So this is Willem Drescher. I believe he's 6'8". As we all know in rowing, it's definitely an advantage if you can leverage your height. Your oars are just an extension of your height and of your arms. So we always drool over arm length wingspan in rowing. It's very exciting. And he certainly used that to his advantage in Crash Bees. This year he was the winner. Moved to Boston 2 years ago, too, so he'll be well familiar with this course.
Oh, certainly. Now we have Rhett Burns, a Northeastern guy, coming right through the bridge as well. Now, having all of that information and knowledge about this course and how it moves definitely is an advantage.
Sure is, because you'll be able to not look. You'll be able to feel. So you'll be able to landmark off the left and right of you. You feel how close the crowd is, and most importantly, you'll be able to know what you're looking for. I find that so often athletes will check over their shoulders, but they won't see. Really important that when you look, if you're going to take the time to check the boat speed that you're doing at the right time, you want to do it immediately after your blades are out of the finish. Look then as you come towards the catch, and then place in and go and apply that pressure one more time.
Yes, now we were just on the previous screen of Cambridge Boat Club, which is right before the infamous Elliott Bridge, a landmark on the Charles River that many people remember, for good and bad reasons.
Yeah, Elliott, certainly easy there to follow the shape of the river rather than going diagonally through it, which means that athletes can sometimes shoot out too far on the other side. We mentioned before you don't want to go over the buoy line because that will give a 5-second penalty as well, and it certainly sneaks up on you. It's a very sharp corner on Elliott Bridge. Number 5 here, Boston Rowing Federation, Clark Dean. Wow, he really has a great stroke rate here. He's looking really long and strong, isn't he?
Yes, Clark has lots of experience, not just here, but at the national team level as well. He, I believe, was one of the people that, as a junior, was already ready and getting ready for the U23s, which is one of a kind as well, being so young and already getting up to the next level in rowing.
Well, and in a field here we've already seen several sweepers turn scull. I mean, Clark certainly has his name carved in stone as a sculler, so that will be an advantage to him. He will have raced in all conditions.
Yes, and one of the great things about Clark is that he's actually able to row both sides here at Harvard. So some seasons he's rowed port, some seasons he rowed starboard. So it's whatever the coach needs. And Charlie Butt definitely utilized Clark at Harvard.
And as the rain continues to fall here, we're here with William from California Rowing Club, a Brown alumni, 6'3" and silver in 2022, and the U23 men's 8.
Yes, Willa Gonzalez coming from a very well-known family with sister Carly coxing at University of Texas at Austin, and Brooke, a freshman at the Stanford Lightweight Women's Crew.
Blades in, pressure on, little look over to make sure you know where the bridge is, and then through. Bow number 9, Kevin Cardno. He started rowing at the University of Alabama in Huntsville and came second in 2023 at the U.S. Rowing National Selection Regatta.
You know what's so great, Andrea, is that you don't have to be a Division I athlete to go and row for the national team. You can row for a club in advance, and that's the beauty of this sport, is that if you put in the work and you're actually making sure you want to be an athlete, you want to be there, you want to have fun, you also want to be a rower, then great things can happen.
So well said. And maybe also let's talk a little bit about the beauty about this boat class. I always loved a single. I trained in it for many years. And one of the things is that it really lays you bare. All of your successes are your own. All of your failures are your own. There's no one else there. It's you versus your mind. And there's a certain rawness to that. I think in my opinion, my humble opinion, the single scull is really the most vulnerable, most raw, and most pure distilled of the rowing shells.
Certainly, yes. The single scull is a one-of-a-kind shell. You know, a lot of people who want to go on a single scull be a part of it because they don't have to rely on anybody else. It's only about themselves, so that's the beauty of the single.
There's Tom Pesek in the yellow Empacher. Great boat. Love those boats as well. Every boat maker brings their own flair. I find that they all have slightly different personalities to them. We've talked already of everything from Wintec to Fluid to Hudsons to Empakers, and it's really up to the athletes to decide what boats feel the best to them. And no mistaking that unisuit, is there, Riverside?
Yes, matching the blades as well. One of a kind. One of the funny things as well is that people always say Empakers are the banana boats because if you can see, looks like a banana.
Yeah, that reverse camber is nice. I always tell people that rowing is just a game of drag. It's about making sure that the boat is up as far out of the water as possible, that when you catch the boat with your blades, that you're catching it on the rise, you're not slowing it down. And as we watch these bows come by side, you'll see that the bow ball, where that bow marker is, it will kind of have a little bit of vertical movement going up and down, and that's to be expected, but you're trying to keep the boat as horizontal as possible. And here we see what it's all about, side-by-side racing in a time trial, pushing each other to the finish, as we are with bound number 20, and that's Andrei. He's a stroke of the Russian men's men's double at the Tokyo Olympics, came 7th, and a two-time 2023 U.S. rowing summer national champion in the men's single and men's double.
Now, Andrei, he was rowing for the Russians, but actually training with all the Americans. Gets both the cultures there.
International. Number 16, Zachary Petronik, 32 years old, finished 5th at the U.S. Rowing Summer National Championships in the men's single and competed twice at the World University Games in both the 8 and the single. Really unusual to have someone going from the largest boat to the smallest.
You gotta have the ability to be able to row in any boat, and that's what's utilized. If you're actually able to be of use, then rowing will take you.
Blades in, legs down. Those knees need to feel like they're attached to railroads. You don't want to see the knees opening up too much at the catch or wobbling from one side to the other, especially with the lateral pressure that you're putting on the boat as you're going to steering. Now, worth mentioning steering in the single. There's no steering in this, right? You have no toe steering. So how are you making the boat move?
Well, you're actually looking around as well. So we see here every around 3 to 5 strokes, an experienced single scorer can look around and actually correct their point. Now we use pressure with the port and starboard blades is to actually move us around, making sure we're staying in the middle of the boat, making sure our balance is all right as well.
Well, it certainly has been a stacked men's championship single here. Any favorites that you're going to be looking for, names you're going to be looking for on the finish?
Willa Gonzowski, definitely. I hope to see him out there, sponsored by Shimano. Clark Dean, rowing for Boston Rowing Federation, a Harvard alum. So many great names here in the champ single as well. I'm super excited to see how it all pans out.
Well, it has been such a pleasure to have your voice, your expertise, your knowledge, your enthusiasm here in the first half of Between Two Bridges. The champ singles has been really exciting, but it's almost over too soon as we're heading into the lightweight singles. So maybe before we bring in our next guest, you can tell everyone where they can follow you.
Yes, as I mentioned before, my name is Hudson Forster. I'm the owner, founder, and host of the 4 Stars Podcast. Podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google. Instagram is 4 Stars Podcast, FORSTARS PODCAST, and my website is 4starspodcast.com. Thanks for having me.
You should really check him out. He's got a fantastic podcast. Thank you so much for being with us, Hudson.
Thank you.
We're going to jump into the action here as we welcome our next guest back to the lightweight singles. So lightweight's completely different event in many ways because you have to weigh in 2 hours before racing. In this men's lightweight singles, you have to be 165 pounds. The women that we'll see later, 130 pounds. And then you try and eat and drink as much as you like. Someone who knows something about making weight is sitting right next to me as well. Welcome very much. You know what? I need you to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here as one of the co-founders of Between Two Bridges, and I'm excited to bring the energy here to the men's lightweight singles. And although it seems that they have started already, we do not want to waste any time jumping right into the action here. My name is Whitney Powell, also known as the Candid Cox. I have coxed all over the place. Leander, Penn AC, Orange Coast College, LMU, you name it, freelance. I founded 7 Seas Rowing Club where I get rowers from all over the world and we go race fun races. If you're not fun, you can't race with me. Let's dive right in to the men's champ lightweight singles because we have already missed bound number 1, who I was excited to talk about personally, Mr. David Smith, who has an incredible amount of experience on this course. I don't know if you've ever seen him here before, but he has raced this race so many times, and he gets lucky number 1. So we have, I believe, seen them go by already. But can you tell us now where we are? What are we looking at?
Yeah, we're ready to bow number 12. And you said that the lightweights have gone so fast that we barely missed them. And I'm hoping that they put down fast times, because this actually is one of the longest standing records. Now in its 39th year, no one has been able to beat Paul Fuchs, 17 minutes, 24 seconds, 0.8, set in 1984. So we'll see if someone can topple that today. Conditions, have you been out and about and talking to people? What did it look like on the course from where you're standing?
Yeah, from where I was standing on the course, it looked pretty messy out there. I was getting blown around by the wind, but it's not too bad on the course right now as we see it, because we are actually getting a lot of rain right now. So while it's quite wet, a lot of the course is actually quite protected, which is really, really nice.
Ooh, and I'm sorry I have to jump
Yes,
in there,
please
because
do.
we saw something that's just classic of Head of the Charles, which is a little bit of a boat stopper here to prevent a collision, which luckily they did. Man, what must that feel like to absolutely stop the boat and then have to go again, knowing that you probably have about 2 miles left?
All you can think about is how much time am I wasting while stopping. So it's about kind of getting your wits about you again and jumping right back into the race, kind of getting your heart rate down a little bit and getting right back into it, stretching it out and just kind of re-entering that race again with that mentality of like, okay, it's all right, I got this, time to get back going. But look at this. I mean, look at this. Coming under the bridge here, we have really, really nice water, but we have these boats kind of starting to collect a little bit. This is where we see a lot of the action. Tell me what you're seeing right now.
Well, right now I'm seeing the wet conditions, which to me as an athlete, I get really excited about rain, because it usually means that it's going to be calm. And these athletes are certainly rowing them like they're calm. Look at that push there, side-by-side racing in a time trial event. Now, whenever someone asks me to show them a master class of rowing, I always point them towards lightweight rowers. Lightweight rowers, because they have to weigh in at a certain weight, they don't have the advantage of using pure raw muscle like us heavyweights do. They have to be efficient. We see the tightest margins in the finishing, and we're certainly seeing a master class here of some of the athletes. There you are, bow number 1. Although, hate to say it, looks like he's under pressure.
I think you're right. Look at this turn. He's actually taken it a little bit wide here. As they come around Elliott, we have somebody cutting on the inside. And can you tell who that is actually from our screen?
Squinting here, but it looks like perhaps bow number 3, that's Ashton Knight. It looks like he's putting fantastic pressure on the leading athlete, and this is a good place to be. You've got the inside lane and you can feel the puddles. I often talk about this moment here, feeling like there's an elastic band connecting the two boats, and that you'll stick there with that half boat distance between it. It's really hard for it to shake. So if I was the leading boat right now, knowing that someone's stuck on my stern, I would put in a good power 5 as soon as you have a good course and try and break that elastic and perhaps, dare I say, demoralize a little bit.
Oh, no, I think that's a great way to put it. As a coxswain, I would probably try to do the same thing with my crew and, say something like, break them, let's get through this bridge. And it's always really interesting to see at this point, too, how people take the line through Elliott, because it's a little bit deceiving. So as a rower, maybe it's a little bit different for you. As a coxswain, I can actually see it a little bit more clearly. But when you're in blind boats like this, it's really, really difficult. Now, you're a sculler yourself as well. You love the single. Yep. Tell me a little bit about what it would be like kind of coming through this bridge completely blind.
A lot of trust. You really have to trust your gut. You have to make sure that you're steering based on the feel rather than looking, because every time you look, you're bringing the boat speed down. You're allowing the run to not go. During the run, which is when the athletes have their hands at their body as they move towards the catch, that's called the recovery. That's actually the point where the boat is running the fastest. So that's the most important part of the stroke. And if you're putting a check on the boat by checking there, looking over your side, man, that can really eat into your lead. So I would pick my moments to take a look, and that is what bow number 8 here from Chris Crawley from Riverside is doing right now.
And if you notice too, it looks like our current leader is Ashton Knight. That is bow number 3 from, he says, X Boat Club. from New York. Now, I'm not exactly sure what X Boat Club is in New York, but it seems that he is our current leader. So he has overtaken our bow number 1, which is David Smith from Seattle Scullers, which have a phenomenal sculling program up there in Seattle. A great Instagram page, too. They really do a lot of fun Instagram posts, which is really great to see. So they really promote themselves up there. They do a great job. And it looks like our new leader, we'll see if they are overtaken here, crossing number 9 Upper Thames Rowing Club, right next to Leander.
Well, if we don't know what X Boat Club was now, we will after this event. Yes, Upper Thames, another athlete from GB. That's Tom Forster. He's a Yale 2-time sprint champion and 2 times USA team athlete as well. So another fantastic amount of experience and depth. But right now we're looking at bow number 18, and that is Justin Schmidt, who is the president for the University of Delaware's lightweight rowing team and won the U23 lightweight men's single sculls in 2021. So an experienced single sculler.
Absolutely. And it looks like here we have a pretty good dogfight going on with a few of these boats coming around the Elliott turn. So we will see who gets that inside turn coming through the bridge on the other side, because that's really the key, is looking through that bridge and taking the diagonal line to the other side when you take that starboard turn towards the finish line.
Well, and these athletes will have, hopefully, depending on where they've traveled from, being able to go on the course during the warm-ups and the lead up to this to practice their lines at a lower stroke rate to make sure that they know the landmarks that they're shooting for, because you're right. If you can cut a couple meters off, well, that's free speed.
Exactly. And it looks like here, who do we have here? Cambridge Boat Club coming through. Do we have a new event starting, actually?
Yes, so right now we're going to be jumping in between the lightweight men's single and the women's championship single. We're looking at Emily Kalsfeld. She is the defending head of the Charles champion with a handful of medals, as well as a U23 athlete in the single and the double. And she's a quad athlete too, so firmly planted in sculling, and certainly giving us a master class of that right here in the beginning stages of the race. One quick look over. I love the length she's getting. I love how straight her knees are, and she's really compressing very well.
It is such beautiful rowing. And if we look at this event now, I don't want to overlook the rest of the men here, but as we just look at the women very briefly, we have some big names here. Emma Twigg from New Zealand, Cara Kohler, Michelle Sesher, Maggie Fellows, Molly Reckford. We have a lot of familiar names in this event, and you better believe these women are going to be throwing down some phenomenal races here.
They sure are, and I believe on your screen right now, that's Emma right now taking a look over. Emma and bow number 1, Emily Kalsfeld. Oh, that was a battle to the line last time with Emma just losing out by a couple of seconds. So the 4-time Olympian and Olympic champion from Tokyo as the head of the Charles regular will be looking for her first win in the single, although she did win in 2016 in the champ women's double with Kim Brennan.
And that is phenomenal here. It looks like our current leader is, in fact, Emma Twigg from New Zealand. And as we speak, is actually changing to Michelle Sesher. So as you can say, this, as we said before, this race is absolutely going to be a dogfight between these women. There is so much talent in this field.
And as we say that, another international athlete on your screen from Ukraine, Katarina, she was 3rd place in the women's quad in the ER in 2022. Yes, absolutely a dogfight. And in the beginning stages of this race, that's really where you want to overtake as you come through Magazine Beach and into the powerhouse stretch, named for 2 reasons. Not only because there is, in fact, a powerhouse there, but because that's really where you want to lay it in. Nice straight stretch and plenty of opportunity to overtake.
Absolutely. As you come around that first turn through the BU Bridge, which is a nice train bridge with all kinds of motivational things that the Boston schools have spray painted all over it lovingly, you get a little bit of motivation, a little bit of push before you have to settle into that open powerhouse stretch. So it does open up a little bit there. We get a little bit more wind, a little bit more weather, and this is where the sound kind of sucks in and gets dead silent. So these crews and these athletes really have to focus down that stretch and get a little bit internal before they start making some of these really exciting turns.
I love the evolution of the event, right? The different phases of it. You start being really calm and collective and putting in the work. One of my first race calls was always, it's going to take a full 2K. In this case, a full 4702 meters. And you have to put in that work in that first part, but also have the internal knowledge to make sure you don't fly and die, you don't spend it all, so that you're keeping something in the reserve for that Irish sprint that we hope we all have.
Absolutely. You're telling me. So as soon as you can make some of these turns, you hope that you can stay away from some of your competition around some of these turns, because if it gets bunched up, you can have a lot of collisions and you aren't supposed to pass under bridges. So we hope that that doesn't happen. Nobody wants that to happen. But again, that's what makes the Charles exciting, is we see it happen even if it's not intended. So hopefully these women can really spread out here. Looks like Michelle Sesher is still in the lead here, and we have Oklahoma City High Performance Center coming through here, crossing bow number 13. And that for us, I believe, is Sierra Sidris.
Yeah, she's from Orion and being challenged here under pressure by bow number 15, or rather passing bow number 15, Hannah Fitz, who is powered by VT maple syrup and data, she says. So, I mean, I was always powered by peanut butter and banana sandwiches myself.
I mean, if maple syrup is all it takes and peanut butter and banana sandwiches, sign me up.
Yeah, well, as a Canadian, maple syrup already runs in my veins, you know? So she is really doing a great job of getting those blades nice and clean, little bit of lumpy water. Another dogfight here, as that 15-second gap between the athletes seems to be closing down. Number 22 on your screen here from Boston Rowing Federation. So she's going to have that hometown advantage.
Absolutely. And look, you can tell she keeps looking over that shoulder and she is on the hunt. Look at this. She's pushing, and still just so beautiful. Look at the finesse here. She's getting all the way up to the front and she's just trying to hold off. What is this? Bow number 21 here. I mean, things are happening so quickly. Bow number 21, right? Sarah Busey. Is that who we're seeing here? Things are happening so fast.
Well, right now, actually, we're back to the start here with bow number 1, Emily Kaltzfeld, the U23 medalist and defending head of the Charles champion. Really happy with this line that she's taking. You can have your blades over the buoy line if you would like to flirt with the buoy line, as it were. You can have your riggers over, but nothing more after that. Well, it's a penalty. So it's a fine line, and you have to also read the wind, because if there's a side wind coming in that's pushing you in or out of the buoys, you'll need to compensate for that. You almost need to steer diagonally, but it looks like she had a great line underneath that bridge. And Emma Twigg here, who is, I would imagine, in second place. A little look out of her, and she no doubt will be on the hunt for the current leader from X Boat Club.
That's right. That is absolutely right. Now, Emma Twigg has raced this race numerous times, and it looks like, again, as we speak, this seems to always happen as I speak, she has actually moved into the first place position. Am I seeing that correctly?
She's actually leader number 2 right on the top there. So second place position. So right. First and second place there, X Boat Club, and then Emma Twigg. Beautiful. Number 6 there, bow number 6 from Cambridge, Michelle Sexer. It's pretty much a permanent fixture of the lightweight women's single, isn't she?
She absolutely is. And unfortunately, you know, we have recently gotten the news that lightweight rowing is going to be exiting the Olympic scene. But fortunately for us and fortunately for these women, we can still see it here at the Head of the Charles, which is a premier event that we absolutely love to watch. And I mean, look at this now. Texas Rowing Center high performed. Who are we looking at here? Bow number 5, Sophia Vitas. Is that who we're seeing
Looks
here?
good. Yeah, she's a national team member in the women's double, and looking like she's doing very well there. It's easier to transition from a smaller boat class to a single scull versus, say, from the women's quad to the women's single. It's a more natural transition. But I can say, again, we said this in the men's, that the women's single and the men's single is such a vulnerable place to be, because it's just you against yourself, against that voice in your head that's telling you, wow, this is a lot of work.
Absolutely. And they do say that single scullers have sort of a special mentality. Like it really, really takes a certain drive and a certain focus and a certain mental place. And, as a coxswain, I have sculled a handful of times. So, in my vast experience rowing singles, I can only speak to this so much except for how much respect I have for these women that are out here racing this. Can you tell me a little bit about that yourself? Like you have experience in the single. What is it like just being alone out there?
There's a beauty to it for sure. And I mentioned this earlier, you definitely need to have a race plan going in because otherwise those thoughts come in. Sometimes we'll hear people talk about what you need a decision-making moment where you have to make a decision. Well, for me, quite often, I had about 12 times I needed to make a decision in a race. That question would come up often and it would be hard. And when your hands are hurting and your legs are full of concrete, it is tough to keep going. And that's why having a race plan, which I actually physically stuck in the boat at my feet, was so vital because I would know where I am, hang and snap. That's all I have to do for 250 meters, hang and snap. And that's what bow number 6 here is doing. We're into the women's lightweight singles. We saw a lightweight competing against the heavyweights in the previous event. We will be going back to the championship. But let's take a look here. Bow number 6, Riverside. That was Kelly Franklin, a lightweight rower from the HPG team. And right now with bow number 9, also from Riverside, competitor to her fellow teammate Natasha Hurt, who's ahead of the Charles Lightweight Collegiate in the Coxed 4 champion from 2021.
And again, in the lightweight category here, we see such finesse from these women. They may not be the tallest, they may not be the heaviest, they may not be the strongest, but they are all capped at that weight limit. So there is so much finesse that goes into rowing this boat. And lucky for them, they have such nice water right now. It is a little bit wet. We can see the rain really pouring down here, but look at this clump that we have coming around Elliott. What are you seeing here?
I love these moments where you can just see the pressure. And really, right now, my thoughts are with bow number 22. I believe that was Emmeline Lawrence. Yes, it was, who is in the position to either feel under pressure, feel pressured, feel stressed of the fact that there is a pack chasing her, or you can get really empowered by that. You have someone now to push off of every single stroke, get half a meter more, push those puddles farther and farther away. And this is just such an exciting event for that. You will always have someone ahead or behind you.
Exactly. And let's be clear too that we were still talking as we come around Elliott here we were still talking about the women's championship singles, I should say rather. The lightweights have started, but coming around Elliott now, we are finishing up the field for the women's open singles. And that is for a cash prize.
It is for a cash prize. So this is the very first time that there has been a cash prize for the entire duration. $10,000. You think, how much craft dinner could you buy with that? $10,000 for place number 1, $5,000 for second place, $2,500 for third place. Mentioned this earlier. The last time that prize money was available was only over 580 meter sprint 22 years ago. And to me, this just equates head of the Charles with events like Holland Becker that also offer cash prizes.
Absolutely. Now, $10,000 might get me in a single. I would train for that. Now, would I do well? No, I probably wouldn't win that 10 grand, but I'd go for it.
I have to tell you, the most motivated I ever have been in a rowing race was we have a dueling over a grand event, 1,000 meters, $1,000. And for $1 a meter, I tell you, I'll go out there.
I'm with you. And wonderful reference to Holland Becker as well. Phenomenal race that I'm sure many of these international athletes have also raced at. As we are finishing up that women's champ singles, we are also still seeing some of the lightweight women come down. So we just want to be clear that we have 2 races that are coming down the course at the same time.
You can always follow along online by looking at the graphics underneath. And right now here was sitting with the women's lightweight singles. Bow number 1, that is Bridget Kennedy from, you're going to help me with this one, Narragansett?
I'm going to say it that way too.
Sounds
good. Yes, and we'll probably get emails afterwards, I'm sure, Instagram messages, but you know, we're going to do our best.
As someone who has had my last name mispronounced by almost every single commentator, I apologize. I'm working on it and I try very hard to work on my pronunciation. But Bridget won the lightweight boat race in 2022, another long race.
It is, and that is a whole different animal getting out there on the Thames like that. What a race. It looks like, who do we have? She is still in the lead here. So bow number 2 coming around the turn right now. A little bit wide. Here, a little bit wide. She's a little bit off the buoys there, but maybe she has a plan for shooting through the Elliott Bridge, looking for those docks on the other side. What else are we seeing here? It looks like, if I can get that bow number here. So bow number 2, Lisa Ray.
Yes, Lisa Ray. But someone who's getting the line just right here out of bow number 4 from Penn in Philadelphia, Riona McCormack. And she rose for Boston University Lightweight Women. So this is a course that she'll be well familiar with in 2020. She also rode for the University of London in 2021 and 2022. While she was getting her master's degree, we do see so many rowers fitting this into an academic schedule, don't we?
Absolutely, yes. Many of these athletes have done the boat race. They've done the Eights Head. They've done Wallingford Head. They've spent some time in the UK racing on different rivers that have streams and bridges and many, many different challenges here. And it looks like, she is from Penn AC, so she will be right next to Vesper Boat Club, which also has many, many phenomenal athletes coming out of there going to national teams as well.
And a hard hold there, perhaps to adjust her steering course by bow number 5, Alexis Morse. She certainly looked like she had a plan, and looked to me like she caught a crab. So an abrupt adjustment needed there as she sacrificed a little bit of boat speed for a better line heading into the bridge. Alex represented Team USA twice at the U23 World Championships. So another fantastic, experienced athlete as we go with bow number 7 here, Aislinn O'Brien.
Absolutely. And she is from Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. And if you notice, too, we see a lot of these athletes from similar areas: Philadelphia, Austin, Massachusetts, Boston, right here on home water at the many, many boathouses that we have along the course here. Riverside here is another one. So who's this? Bow number 6.
Kelly Franklin, a lightweight rower from the HPG team. Looked like she has made up a little bit of that 15 seconds that the athletes are started on. Beautiful shot here. Perhaps a little bit of rowing one-on-one here, so we can see that you have a bow number on the front of the boat and you have another number affixed to the back of the scullers. Now, all scullers will be wearing what we call a unisuit, not too dissimilar from a wrestling outfit. Why is it important to wear spandex?
Well, that is a great question. Besides most of us just looking fantastic in spandex, we actually wear it so it stays out of the wheels under the seat. So we want to wear tight clothing, not just for looks, but because we don't want loose clothing to get caught in those moving wheels on the seat as the athletes get their legs down.
Absolutely. Or I know I did go rowing once with pockets and my thumbs found the pockets, and that's not exactly where you want to be. Rowing sculls are many things, but stable is not one of them.
That's a great point. You don't want to get your hands caught as you're trying to get those blades out at the finish. And that is something that you will work on with different rigging and clothing, which is why we wear our tight clothing here.
Olivia Camusi from Lake Merritt lives in San Francisco. She was started as a walk-on rower and a coxswain for D1, is also an avid sailor. She actually competed in the Pacific Cup race from San Francisco to Hawaii. What a talented athlete. Hopefully doesn't feel like open ocean rowing for her today, but we'll probably have to debrief with her after as she goes underneath that, I believe, Elliott Bridge.
That is Elliott Bridge. That's exactly what we're looking at here, and she is just out of sight now, so she will be heading to that starboard side, making that final turn towards the finish line.
So Elliott Bridge to the finish line, about 750 meters?
Roughly.
And a little bit of a straightaway, so
yeah,
maybe an opportunity for a sprint?
It depends on how straight you take that course. You could either make that a little longer or, maybe a little bit shorter if you're cutting off some of those corners. But it is a pretty nice straight stretch as soon as you make that turn out of the bridge and you hug those buoys a little bit on your starboard side and blast out to the finish. So it does open up a little bit. We get a little bit more wind out there. But at that point, most of the athletes are just so excited to be at the finish. They've mastered Elliott. They've gone through the turns. Nobody crashed in weeks, hopefully. And we are just blasting through the finish line where a lot of the crowds are again.
And the crowds, for sure, in an event that is 3 miles of a test of chaos management, an endless barrage of distractions. The finish line is certainly the most exciting part. That's where the beer tents are, and probably the most jubilant expressions of joy as you cross the finish line.
That is a nice way to put it. Now, did we actually talk about the 3-mile distance and a little bit about why this is called the Head of the Charles?
No, but I think that I'd love for you to take me through it.
Yeah. All right. I'd be happy to. It actually started in 1965. We had 3 friends, guys, of course, because guys would think of doing stuff like this. They bet each other that they could race 3 miles down the Head of the Charles and deem themselves the Head of the Charles, whoever got there first. And from then on, obviously one of the friends won, was named Head of the Charles, and the race stuck around and it grew every year. So they actually had more friends come in and want to join in the bet. So it started off as just a bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. You have to be a little bit crazy as a rower to decide, yes, I want to do 3 miles of pain. 2 kilometers just isn't enough for me. I need to double that, triple that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it looks like we may have another race starting up here.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that next race that we'll see. This is actually the Directors Challenged Mixed Doubles. This is something that I am going to compete in one day. I already have a couple of friends who have a pinky sworn. One of them we know very well, Taylor Perry, to do this with. And we mentioned earlier that one of the unique things about the Head of the Charles is that in those 11,000 athletes, you can only go down the course one time unless you're a part of the Directors Challenge Mixed Doubles, and all the proceeds from these Directors Challenge, and pardon me, there's not just the mixed doubles, there's a couple of events. All of the proceeds from that goes towards putting on the event the next year.
And that's so great, too, because look at the amount of entries we have in these events and how fun to be able to race with another guy or another woman and just kind of get your friends together and go out there and putz around down the course. Except putzing is far from what these athletes are doing. They're absolutely crushing it. And it looks like we have bow number 1 here. Roy Colvin and Melissa Perlstein from College Club Seattle.
Yes, you said it, how amazing it is to be able to row with your friends. I see a husband and wife team coming down in bow number 5. I'm sure they're not the only ones among them. Now, a double, in my opinion, would probably be the ideal way to do a mixed double. When you're putting together perhaps different statures, although I am 6'1", so I'm sure I could row with a man, but sometimes if a woman is slightly shorter, some of the considerations is going to be getting your blades in at the same time, despite the fact that you may not have the same length on the stretcher, right?
Exactly. And I think you said it here. We would choose a double where each person has 2 oars over something like a pair, where each person just has one oar, and we are sweep rowing, which makes it much more difficult to match up. Mm-hmm. So here we see the doubles, which kind of evens the playing field just a little bit, and like you said, makes it a bit easier to match up those statures and length.
Elizabeth Pratt and John Winter coming down in bow number 2. Little look out from bow. We talked about it a bit earlier, but bow is typically the person who is the one looking out, spotting, talking to their stroke partner and telling them, okay, we're going to go a little to star, hard on star or soft on star in order to line themselves up just right. And then here we go to bow number 7 from Mexico.
Yes, it looks like we have Christian Mulvig and Gabriela Huerta from Antares Remo, Mexico. And what a great, great team to have all the way from Mexico here, just like we have teams from around the world. It is so great to see these teams that typically have maybe smaller teams that can come and represent at such an international event.
Right, you are. And worth mentioning that Gabby, is actually an Olympian from Sydney, and Christian is a national Danish rowing team, an international combination. Wow, I wouldn't want to race those two. Imagine the talent in that boat. Bow number 5 here, we have Donald Townsend and Leslie Creco. This is a husband and wife combination from Head of the Charles Mixed Double alumni. They've raced this before in bow number 5. mixing it up here. Of course, it doesn't matter who's in bow, but you want to make sure that the qualities are correct. So in stroke, your role is to be the metronome. You're the person who has the stroke coach in front of you, and you're setting the pace. And that is the same also in a women's 8 or men's 8. You're essentially just playing a game of telephone, trying to make sure that that message gets passed along the boat as quickly as possible, and you're all in at the same time.
Actually, you've made a really good point here. We've talked about the stroke as a person, and the stroke coach. And I want to differentiate between actually taking a stroke, the verb. The stroke seat is also a position in the boat, which is the person that everyone else behind them follows. And then a stroke coach, which is actually a small computer that is at the front where they can see what their stroke rate is, as well as how many meters, and a bunch of information we can go into. We could nerd out on forever. But just to differentiate those three things, who are we looking at now on the screen?
We're looking at bow number 8, Laurel Fournier and Kyle Vio. They said that after a 5-year hiatus from sculling, both are thrilled to be back racing on the Charles. That's the great thing about this event, is that it's not just for youth. This is for all ages to come, all ability levels to come, and to race against the best in their category. They're looking really great and moving nicely together here.
They actually are. I mean, this is really nice. Look at them getting butt to heels here, every single stroke, and they look so relaxed. They really do.
And when you do it right, that's what it looks like. If I'm doing my job right in the boat, it's supposed to look easy, even though I'm dying on the inside.
Absolutely.
Well, bow number 13 doesn't look like they're dying on the inside. That was Sean Durkin and Sarah Pickus. Sean rode at San Diego State. Sarah rode at George Washington. And bow number 14, Brianna and Dietmar. They are 2 former national team members from their respective countries and have teamed up for this Austrian-American international lineup.
They sure are, and they are from Nashville, and they actually have quite a history of rowing together. They have done historically quite well at races like the Hooch and here. And Dietmar, I believe we will see in multiple events, as he is quite a gregarious man from Nashville that is very, very motivated, and he really gets after it in a lot of these races. So it should be a very exciting way to see Nashville represented here at the Charles.
Right now, we're in the middle of the race pace, so we're seeing a great amount of calmness in the boat as they're stuck into it. They're just doing the work, getting it done. Bow number 18, Penny Luong and Evan Hulprin. These two have been a duo for a decade, with a combined 50 years of sculling experience and a handful of Head of the Charles experience. Wow. And rowing in the land of evergreens and eagles, steering through bridges, fishermen, and ducklings. Well, you might find a couple ducks on the course to steer through as well. Certainly a few bridges.
Absolutely.
Looking at the bow there of our current leader. This is College Club Seattle, although looking at leader number 1, I believe that's Nangarat Rowing Club, if I'm looking at the correct information. Well, I'm not. I'm getting shakes of the heads from off screen. That's okay. We're going to stick here anyways with Melissa and Roy as they come around that corner here. A little bit wide, perhaps, although they're probably setting up for the bridge.
Again, yes, you can see them starting to look back. They're going to get lined up here and try to look through that bridge and see if they can get lined up with that dock, again, to make that starboard turn towards the finish to see if they can hold off the boat right behind them. Is this bow number 3, Christine Cavallo and Sean Wolf? I believe it is. Christine Cavallo here, lots of experience in coastal right now. She is repping the U.S. in coastal rowing. She's done very, very well. We just got back from Italy, actually, and she does quite well rowing there with her partner, Sean Wolf. So we will see if they can chase them down through the Elliott Bridge here. But look at this. We already have these packs coming around, chasing them down as well. So who are we looking at coming around the turn now?
Well, it's Mexico. Christian and Gabriela, now an Olympian, former Olympian from Sydney, and a national team athlete. You must imagine that the pre-race talks that these two must have, I'm sure that they're going to a deeper level than your average bear in terms of what they're going to be thinking about. And you can see there Gabby really doing a great job of accelerating on the back end, making sure that she's matching. Look at that. She's definitely slightly shorter than Christian, but her blades are just going in picture perfect with him. bow number 9 here. That is from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Looks like A. Reed. We'll look over his left-hand shoulder there.
I believe that is Andrew Reed there, who actually has a lot of experience in the men's 8. He has rowed for the U.S. for quite some time, so he has spent quite a bit of time out in Oakland training formerly with Mike Tatey and with the national team. So it is nice to see him here with teammate Alex Spalding. It's nice to see them out together. And look at this. We are already getting more clumps of boats here gathering up, sort of collecting, and everyone's going to try to make the move for those bridges here. And this is where we can kind of start to see some exciting action.
Yes, because not only is it exciting because there's more crowds, there's enthusiasm, but this is where you can have a little bit of collisions, God forbid, if you're stuck in the moment and you've forgotten to take a look out because you're just so focused on what's going on in front of your feet. But so far, we haven't seen very many collisions. One earlier today, unfortunately, but for the vast majority have been safe, and that's in part thanks to the 2,400 volunteers that we have, many safety people on the boats, on the bridges with their loudspeakers.
Absolutely. And it looks like we have bow number, if I'm seeing this correctly, bow number 27, Alex Thomas and Lane Marmon from Greenwich Crew, Connecticut, going through Elliott now, followed by Mark Callahan and Cynthia Tingle from Cambridge Boat Club. So again, they will have a lot of experience coming around this turn. But look at this clump here. Look at, what is this, six, 7 boats here coming up to Elliott?
Yeah, with a stopped boat as well. I wonder what's happened there. Looks like they perhaps got caught on the buoys, have to extract themselves from that. What's it like to go from a dead stop, a boat stop, to having to start again?
You know, it is very stressful in the moment, but at least from a coxswain's perspective, it is something where you really have to just keep your crew's heads in the game. You really have to get them back into it and say, you know what, it's okay. I got the line. Let's get right back into it. We'll pick it up, probably add a little bit of a pressure 10, 15 to get back up to pace and get right back into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone once told me that a start is like pushing a fridge on ice. So if you're stressed and you're anxious and you just try and rip that blade through the water, you're not going to do much good. So it's a reset, finding a gathering point, probably communicating that before. If we get off stroke, where are we gathering together? Usually at the finish. Set and go.
Absolutely. You should be coxing. That was well said.
If I could fit my hips into it, I might try. I do love telling other people to go faster, but I'm sure that's not what Laurel and Kyle are talking to each other. We just saw them at bow number 8. And now riding with bow number 17, that's Tara Jones and Scott Orbach, who row on the Willamette River in Portland, Oregon, where they famously heckle their teammates from their double, aptly named the Heckler.
Well, how could you not with a name like that? I would anyway if I was rowing with a pair like this. I mean, look how great they look. Coming up to the Elliott Bridge, again, I bet they are ready to be finished in this absolutely torrential pouring rain that we have going on out here.
Oh, and it looks like, you see, this is a perfect example of that gathering point there where you just got out of line. Maybe you caught a blade or something has pushed you off, and that crew number 12, that's Jonathan and Jolie, did a great job of just finding their gathering point and getting on with it. Well done them.
And it looks like we have bow number 39 with Nathan Skalski and Rosalind Seats from Lake Oswego, Oregon. And it looks like they may have had a little bit of trouble with something, like they were trying to kind of get back into a rhythm with each other. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but hopefully they can pick it up again before they hit that bridge and kind of make that turn to the finish.
Little look out here on the corner to make sure as they're coming around the bend. Now, it is sometimes tough to keep pressure on when you're going around a long bend like this, right? And in perhaps larger boats, you're going to have steering. Often there isn't steering in these doubles. So you can steer by one of two ways. You can either put extra pressure on your starboard blade, so I can pull harder with my left hand, but that only helps if I am also connected with the foot. So I try to think of not just pulling, but also pushing. And if you apply pressure to your foot plate on your left or the right hand side, that will also turn the boat. And it's much easier to use those big leg muscles than my tiny little biceps.
Well, you know, that is true. And these small boats, like the doubles and the singles, are so sensitive to those foot plates. And you can even feel it if you put just a little bit more pressure on one foot over another. That boat is very likely to turn. So it really becomes a coordination between hand to foot.
Hand to foot, perfect. I often talk about rowing as translating the power on the face of the blade all the way through to the foot stretcher. Our feet are affixed. It's the only point that is affixed to the boat, and that's really where our power goes to. It's tempting to think of rowing as the blades moving through the water, but in actuality, it's the blades being anchored, placed in the water, and you pushing the boat past it.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't think of rowing that way. Like you said, it really is a pushing sport. You are clipping the boat along with a little bit of finesse. And like you said, locking that spoon in the water, with getting that grip underneath the water and pushing the boat away from the blade.
Bow number 22 here, Karen and David. They row for Rocky Mountain Rowing Club. And shout out to Eric Cornett here, looking like he's doing a good job. David Stevens, who is 72 years old and laying it down in stroke.
Unbelievable. I hope I'm doing this at 72.
David, you're my new hero. You're my goals. Hope to be doing that when I'm 72 as well. Bow number 23, Lauren McGee and Eric Cornett. This is their fourth time at this event. But this year they swapped seats, so look out.
That's fun. And you can see Texas Rowing Center, again, they have a phenomenal representation at this race, as well as some of the others, and small boats in particular. They do really, really well down there. Something in that Texas water at Lady Bird Lake, I'm not sure what it is, but it is working.
Riding here with bow number 27, Lane Mammon and Alex Thomas from Greenwich Crew. I love the high vis. Definitely good. When I used to row, my parents would beg for me to wear a bright pink shirt just so that they could tell who I was coming down. Of course, squinting from the shore, we all look the same as rowers, right? We're all just tall and dressed in spandex with Oakleys on.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yes, but it does help on gray days like this if you are out in a small boat to actually be seen, which they achieved.
Jill Cooper there doing a great job of adding just a little bit of layback to compensate for Barry Gustafson. But right now we're looking at boat number 30, Cynthia Tingle and Mark Callahan. Plenty of experience in this boat here. So many, I can't even read out how many accomplishments they have, but they're laying it down on the team. Another look at this as we see a move happening. Is that bow number 36? Pushing past bow number 31.
I believe it is, if we are seeing that right, and that is Andrea Chimie and Anthony Otto from beautiful Bainbridge Island, Washington, and they are really making a push here.
Well, and that's impressive considering this is Andrea's first time at Head of the Charles, but they've been friends and sculling together for 5 years, so exciting to have a little bit of hand-to-hand combat here.
Exactly. And what a phenomenal way to come do the Charles for your first time with your friends and just go down the course like this and be able to make a move. And look at, even as we speak here, 3 boats lining up here vying for that top line coming through the Elliott Bridge.
This is what I live for there. 29 getting very close to the stern of the other boats. They are adjusting their line to try and get in between. Tell me a little bit, walk me through about what happens if you have a boat catching up on you as the slower boat but in the lead. What is your responsibility to do?
Well, unfortunately, if you are being overtaken, you do have to yield, as that can be a major penalty if you don't. So my first move would be to try to hold them off to see if I can do that. So you better believe that I am going to push my crew and do anything I can to tell them to get them away from me. I do not want to be overtaken. But should the inevitable happen, you do have to yield or you will get a penalty.
Absolutely. And that's something that is a real risk of collision if you don't do that here. A little bit of a wobble here from number 38 as they come around. Not unexpected when you are putting additional pressure on one side or the other. What can happen is the boat can kind of go from side to side. Keep in mind, I mean, these doubles are really very light. They're only 60 pounds and they're designed to just be as narrow as our hips, to be as light as possible. And so unlike other sports where you would be tempted to think that the balance is coming from the core or perhaps from the boat itself, all of the balance is coming from the oars. So if you aren't holding the oars at the same height, if one is going up higher than the other, then that can tip the boat from side to side.
Absolutely. And, I actually think of rowing, and this is kind of funny, but think of rowing as somewhat like horseback riding, where the body awareness and the responsiveness to the way that you move your body and the finesse and the delicacy of which you use your hands makes the boat respond to you. And so it's a very delicate process, even though it looks like you're heaving the boat through the water. It's actually quite delicate. And you have to be very, very aware of what your body is doing when.
Whitney giving us an absolute masterclass of what makes a good cox, indeed also a good coach, is using different analogies like that. My coach, Michelle Darville, used to just absolutely get wild and crazy. I remember once she said, imagine you're riding a skateboard on a ball. I'm not quite sure if she made the point that she was trying to, but you have to continue to think of different ways to explain these concepts so that one day, 1 year down the road, your athlete goes, oh, hey, that thing you've been telling me for a year? I get it now. That analogy helped.
Yes, and I have seen that myself where an athlete at some point takes one stroke and they're like, oh, so that's what it's supposed to feel like. And it takes, it can take years to just kind of get that feeling of moving the blade through the water delicately with those fingers and transferring, like you said, all the way down to the toes. And here we are, another double coming around the turn towards Elliott.
Swan Creek. This is Steve Platt and Andrea Deenan together here rounding up, but looking like they're doing a great job of keeping tight to that buoy line. I would imagine the way that they're sculling that they probably took a look at the course well before and perhaps visualized it. There's some great videos out there. There's some great coxswain videos out there as to how to get the best line, and looking like they're doing a great job here. That's bow number 45, Swan Creek Rowing Club. They will be the last boat in the Directors Challenged mixed doubles before we head to the paras, which I'm so excited about. But in the meantime, while they're on the screen, tell me a little bit about what you're seeing.
Well, you know what? They may be number 45 in your programs, but they are number 1 in our hearts right now as they come through the Elliott Bridge towards that finish line, because it takes guts to do this race. And I have to say, good job for them for doing it and finishing, last on the course. But again, we have to wait for those official results to see what the times will be. And that is the exciting part of the time trial format.
But really also first in our hearts are those people with umbrellas on the bridges coming down to cheer on, whether you know the scullers or the sweepers or not, and to add that enthusiasm that makes this Head of the Trials this one of a kind in the world.
Exactly. And unfortunately, the rain is dampening the crowds just a little bit. Usually we have the visuals of those bridges just packed with people from end to end, but the rain is really coming down. So it is going to be a little bit harder for those without those umbrellas to stand out there for too long. But, it is very exciting, and we still do have them. And as we speak here, look who we have coming around the turn.
We'll wait for the graphic to come up to help these old eyes as we look for the bow numbers. Hard to see sometimes in the rain. But in the meantime, maybe worth mentioning a little bit of Rowing 101 facts for those aunts and uncles at home. So again, we have 2 types of disciplines in rowing. We have sculling, where you have one person with 2 oars in their hands. That's what we're seeing right now. We have sweeping, where you have 1 oar that you hold with both hands. And those blades, those oars are actually pretty deceptively long. These sculling oars we're looking at right now are about 9.5 feet long, but only weigh 3.5 pounds. When we get into the sweep boats, those are 12, sometimes 13 feet long. Always is impressive when you see, and you can see it on that iconic photo of the Head of the Charles, the logo of the person standing next to the oar. You get a real appreciation for just how tall those oars are.
Exactly. And again, how much finesse it takes to really maneuver that through the water, as your body comes forward and back, you anchor that blade in. Now, tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here. Bow number 40, it looks like.
I have to jump in as a Canadian to see another, because these combination is from St. Catharines. And the reason I want to talk about that is that St. Catharines is going to be the host of the Super Worlds next year. What is the Super Worlds? I hear you asking. I'm so glad you asked, Whitney. The Super Worlds are what happens during the Olympics. So we are going to have a combination combination of junior, U23, and senior non-Olympic events all together in one place for one big extravaganza. Only happens once per 4 years.
And are non-Canadians allowed to come race at this?
We'll think about it. I'm open to bribes. No, the
Perfect.
whole world is going to come to Canada, and Vanessa Moores and Brian Thorne here are representing St. Catharines. Right now sitting with bow number 44 from Avalon, Catherine Yeager and John Leisinger. I do apologize if I have mispronounced anyone's names today. I'm sure I have, but that's your name for today. You can change it back tomorrow. Catherine and John are racing together for the first time. They met last year at the Masters Worlds in France and fell for each other. She is primarily a sculler and he is a sweep rower, and they've learned that a dash of humor and grace goes a long way to making a successful, wait for the zinger, pair.
Well, I want to put that on my how we met story. I don't know how you top that, but what a phenomenal experience for the two of them to finish this race together.
You get an appreciation there for the rain coming down as they take a little bit of a single arm stroke to get back into the course. You can see green buoys there. What's the difference between the green buoys and the red buoys?
Yeah, so the green buoys are actually going to be on our starboard side here as we come through the bridge, and the red buoys are going to be on our port side as we come into the Elliott Bridge. So we're actually going to be aiming from the red buoys across the way, looking through the bridge to those green buoys to shoot us around the turn towards that finish line.
Love that. Look at that iconic logo there of the head of the Charles on the Elliott Bridge. That's one of the most exciting places to watch. But maybe as we wrap up the first of this director's choice, we can turn our attention to the para mixed PR3-4s. And I know that you had an opportunity to talk to some of the para athletes today. Can you tell me a little bit about what we can expect over the course of the next hour?
Yeah, you know what? They were all really, really excited to come out here and race today. And part of it was the community. A lot of them said the community is what makes this so phenomenal. And they were so excited to have so many international athletes, not only in the fours here, but in the para inclusion doubles, in the fours, in the PR3 fours. We will talk a little bit more about some of the differences in the categories here as we get going. But they really just said that they were just so excited to get out here together and have a little bit more presence and recognition. And that is something that para does not get very often.
That's true. Although the Olympics and the Paralympics are separate events, one thing that I'm really excited about is that we're at the World Championship level, that we have merged these two. And that's something that we're seeing in other sports as well. I got to commentate at the canoe and kayak World Championships this year held in Duisburg, Germany. And they also had the para teams mixed in and among the able bodies, which is as it should be, absolutely, because we get the opportunity to see the best in the world from both the Olympics and the Paralympics. Now, the mixed PR3s, maybe you can tell me a little bit about what that category means.
Yeah, that is a great question, and I'm hoping you will jump in with me too, because we actually have some very interesting distinctions for this event specifically. So this is going to be the event where they have functional use of their legs, trunk, and arms. Yeah. And that is a different distinction than PR2 and some of the inclusion. So for now, though, it looks like we are looking at the PR3, which again is legs, trunk, and arms.
Exactly right. It is coxed as well. So is a coxed 4 boat. And you can also have visual impairment in this.
That's right.
Category.
Good distinction. Thank you for adding that in.
Now, this is a race that I'm so excited about. On paper, you might be well, there's only 2 boats in this race. This is not a 2-boat race. This is a showdown.
Don't be fooled.
I'm so excited. We're going to talk plenty about these crews, but right now, and look at the tightness between the two. So, bow number 1 is going to be the silver medalist from 2023 World Rowing Champions. That means that they have qualified a PR3 boat for the Paris Olympics. Behind them, representing Old Glory, well, those are the Tokyo Paralympic Games silver medal crew as well. And worth noting, the lone medalists for the U.S. in Tokyo in both Olympic and Paralympic events. So phenomenal athletes.
Exactly. And you will see that name a few times, Old Glory, across different boat classes. That is not only specific to a PR boat. Old Glory in the U.S. typically means that those are ex-Olympians, ex-national teamers that are coming back to row together that are not currently on the team.
Also worth noting, as we're jumping back and forth, thankfully we have the help of our graphics there. We will be jumping between the PR3-4s as all of these events are starting so close together, and the para mixed inclusions 4. But right now we are with the PR3 crew, bow number 1 coming through. That is Emily Eldritcher, Ben Washburn, Sage Harper, Skylar Dahl, and Alex Flynn. Younger crew, 2 20-year-olds, a 21, a 22, and a 24. And they must be so incredibly excited to come home. Silver medalists from the World Championships at a very important World Championships.
I mean, phenomenal, too. I mean, look how they're rowing here. This is absolutely beautiful rowing. Not only do I feel old, but I feel, look at watching this. Through the bridge here, blades in and out together. They are making this look so easy.
Yes, and the lineups for both of these have remained the same despite the gap in the years between the two crews. Here we go. Bow number 2. This is Karen Petrick, Ali Riley, Danielle Hansen, Charlie Norden, John Tangway. This is the first time that these crews have gone head to head. This is going to be an absolutely competitive race today.
Exactly. And I believe some of these athletes have some awesome college experience, university experience, if you will, as well. Danny Hansen, I believe, went to University of Washington, so she would have some phenomenal pedigree just rowing for UW there with those women. If you have seen them out here, you will this weekend. Again, they are a phenomenal program.
Yes. Again, right through the bridge, looking really strong and collected. You have to really have fantastic power application in the 4 to make sure you're putting your blades in. Now, we talked about it a little bit with Hudson as well about the coxswain. Now, in the coxed 4, you can either be sitting right here where the PR3 sits, or you can be tucked up in the bow as a coxswain. Where's your favorite place to sit?
You know, I'm really glad you mentioned that because this is not actually very usual anymore to see a stern-loaded coxed 4 anymore. Most people have kind of moved towards that bow-loaded 4. Now, I do like a bow loader. They are a little bit lighter. I actually have a very nice cockpit and field of vision to see, except right behind me, of course. I don't have eyes in the back of my head, but you learn to feel. And that's really what comes with experience. The only thing that makes a bow loader difficult in conditions like this is they fill up with water. So every time your crew comes up to the catch, that water sloshes up your back and comes around. But what are we going to do? Complain? You guys are rowing, so we can't say anything.
Well, and it also, though, gives you an opportunity to see the blades. You're talking about boat feel. What we talk about when we mean boat feel is the things that we're doing without our eyes. You can kind of feel if the boat is off, and that's something that coxswains need to develop if they're going to be in a bow mounted, alongside also doing your number 1 job, which is steering.
Exactly. It all comes down to safety. But when you spend a lot of time in these boats, you start to learn what you can feel. You know, even if you can't see, if you had your eyes closed, you should still be able to feel if somebody's catching a little bit early, somebody's finishing a little bit late, if somebody's leaning out a little bit. You know, again, it comes down to that body centeredness that we talked about before, kind of like horseback riding. It's a very gentle process, keeping that body weight centered and still. So we actually want to be looking for that quietness in the boat. And if we can hear a bunch of noise going on, then we know to look for something.
Well, and speaking of quietness, of course, you're not there yelling at your crew. The coxswains have kind of like a Britney Spears microphone, and you're speaking to your crew through a megaphone.
That's right. That's right. In the olden days, Boys in the Boat, we will see this phenomenal film that is coming out. You will see coxswains wearing a device on their heads with an actual megaphone, which is very funny to see now. But we do have modern devices called a Cox Box, which is a small satellite device, if you're lucky to have the satellite GPS, with a small microphone on a headband that has about 2 speakers in the boat, depending on if it's a 4 or an 8, where the rest of the crew can actually hear us down in the shell. So there's no escaping.
I can attest to that as someone who rowed in a Cox boat. There's no escaping the coxswain. They see everything. And what do we see? Well, I believe that we have gone to the mixed para inclusions inclusions for. We're looking at number 3 here, bound number 3 from CRI, pardon me. No, I don't believe that's correct because my graphic is telling me community rowing. Now, inclusion 4, let's talk a little bit about that. So this means that this event is similar to the previous event. However, inclusion events also allow for mixed ability crews, meaning that the crew can have a combination of athletes with and without disabilities.
Exactly. So you can have up to 50% of the boat with or without disabilities. So this is basically up to the crew to put together whatever combination they choose.
And this event first debuted, I believe, in 2015, and excited to say that it has done nothing but grow. If you build it, they will come, as they said once of women's rowing. And now this year, the regatta features the strongest field we've ever had for both the inclusion 4s and the inclusions double as well.
And that's really, I think, a phenomenal way to get people into the sport and get some of these athletes that maybe have different abilities, disabilities, whatever, however you would like to classify that, and bring them into the sport with some experienced rowers. You can put whoever you'd like in there to pair them with, and really just get more of these athletes out here on the water, which again is so phenomenal to see.
Right, you are. Beautiful line through the bridge there as the rain continues to be relentless. Unity Boat Club going through in a lane and with bow number 1. Umbrellas still there. I can hear the cowbells now as people are cheering as they go through in iconic Boston. Worth mentioning again, just a number of ways that this event is so special. Over 11,000 athletes from around the world competing in 67 events. That's 2,600 boats that we somehow squeezed onto the banks, and 2,400 volunteers, an army of volunteers, one per boat at least, to make sure that this 2.5-day event is as spectacular as it can be for our 400,000 spectators.
Exactly. And I don't know if we've actually said this, but our camera here where we are sitting is actually on the Cambridge Boat Club. So that is an iconic boathouse that is sitting right here on the banks of the Charles River. And our camera is pointing at the Elliott Bridge from that boathouse. That is what we are looking at from. CRI, community rowing, which was just mentioned, is a few thousand meters just past the finish line there. So these boathouses are all very local. They're very familiar to these turns. And it looks like we have another one coming around this iconic Elliott turn as we speak.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that. So this is West Side Rowing Club. Gina, Kathy, Andy, Dan, they have over 70 years of collective experience as masters and para rowers.
Unbelievable.
And even more impressive, each have medaled at this year's Masters Nationals, but are rowing together for the first time at Head of the Charles. And rowing together well. This is not an easy course for the rowers or for the coxswains. As a rower, I can tell you, sometimes you are turning much more than you're used to in a race, and it can get a little bit tiresome after your coxswain has told you to go hard on port 4 times, and you're like, I've been doing it for the last a minute. I don't want to do it anymore.
I know. That's actually really interesting you say that. And there are many ways to take these turns, and we have seen everything from coxswains sticking their hands in the water to try to make that turn if they don't think that they can make it or they need to cut inside another crew. We have seen coxswains just use the toggles just a little bit to kind of turn that rudder, which if you've never seen a rudder is about the size of a credit card. So when you get a boat that is up to 63 feet long, turning on a credit card, it's a little bit tough. So you have to think ahead as you come into these turns. And the other way to do it is to actually use your athletes. So like you said, you may need to have a side power up a little bit, power down a little bit. Coxswains do it in many, many ways. But one thing that I like to kind of do is have one side, instead of powering down or powering up, hold water just a little bit on one side. So it's kind of a little cheat. You can keep your blades in just a little bit longer on one side, almost like you're holding water, but just a split second longer before those spoons pop right up out of the water again. And it just gives you a little bit sharper turn coming around those turns. So I really don't need to ask another side to power up. You should already be at 100%.
Whitney, I'm ready for your masterclass on 10 ways to turn. But right now, looking at our beautiful selves here, worth mentioning again. So as a coxswain, I'd love to hear, how did you get into coxing?
That's a really great question. I actually tried out to be a rower, and it didn't occur to me that everyone was about 1.5 feet taller than me. So I either wasn't going to make the team or I was going to be a coxswain. So it was at the end of high school, and I said, you know what, I'll just wait to finish out my senior year. I'll start up in college. And that's exactly what I did. Orange Coast College, we've seen the likes of Sam Melvin represented, who is also from Orange Coast College. He was in the men's lightweight single here. Phenomenal U23 rower as well. Hopefully will stay on the national team and represent us. Go Coast. Not that I'm biased. How about you? How did you get into rowing?
Well, a little bit unusual. I started at the practically geriatric age of 27. I wanted to do a tough sport, and so over a Thanksgiving dinner, I told my family friends, I'm going to run a marathon. That's the hardest thing I could think of. And my friend said, well, you're 6'1". Have you thought about rowing? And I went, no, you don't understand. I want to do something hard. Was quickly humbled. I started at a talent identification program, and I fell in love and out of the boat. I've probably fallen out of the boat more than anyone you've ever met. I don't recommend starting in a single in November in Canada, but I certainly am very good at getting back into a single now. So it was a fantastic way to start, and I fell in love with the sport for all reasons that have nothing to do with the sport. This attracts such an interesting rowers are just so passionate, so team-based. We push ourselves to failure and we lift each other up, and moments like this to come together with all the spectators is just so special. We train, and the amount that we race is really just so few. So to be able to come and have one of your moments to race be at the head of the Charles is certainly one of the highlights of my career.
Absolutely. Well, and know your strengths. I'm going to wait for your masterclass on how to get back into a single, because I sure couldn't do it. I have not had the privilege of flipping a single yet. I have rowed one a few times, but it's mostly just to appease, my rowers. I have to sit down and do the 2K every once in a while. I have to jump in the single, all the things, that are pure entertainment for everyone else.
Well, looking here, the rain has not let up, but I would rather race in these conditions. Usually means that it's nice and flat. We're going to expect a little bit more wind tomorrow, but the rain will be thankfully out. We'll be looking, as there's just a brief break here in the events, for the next round of para-mixed doubles, and this time the para-mixed inclusion, and this time will be the doubles.
Absolutely. And this is a massive field here. It looks like we have at least 27 entries.
Yeah, it's the largest in the regatta's history of this event. Once again, like the four, this started in 2015 as a way to expand access beyond the Paralympic disciplines and include a broader range of disabilities in the competition. And so in this event, the bow seat typically acts as a guide rower, in addition to being a competing member of the crew. And this event has several divisions within it, with the main distinction being para, where both athletes have that disability, and inclusion, where one athlete has a qualifying disability and the other does not.
I think that's a really good distinction to make, because I think as this starts to grow, we may see some of these different categories start to grow. And so it's nice to be clear on what, PR2 is, PR3, the inclusion, the doubles, the fours. There's so many categories. So let's make sure that we keep them straight now before they start to grow too much. I mean, we have a phenomenal showing here internationally. Look, too, we have Australia, we have South Africa, we have the Netherlands, we have, so many, GB. Look at this spread.
Well, and for those of you, listening at home and wondering, well, I wonder what category of para-athlete I would fall into, maybe perhaps a very distilled version of that would be. So in PR3, these crews will use the sliding seats and usually have functional use of their legs, their trunks, their arms. And PR2 is a fixed seat category where para-rower does use their full upper body only, so their legs are going to be still. And then in PR1 is another fixed seat category where the para-rowers does not use their trunk, but just their very upper trunk and their arms when competing. So I'm sure that there's all sorts of resources that you can find, but it's a growing sport, and we hoped that watching this has inspired someone somewhere to fire up the Googles and find their local para team. Right now, we are here with bow number 3 in the Mixed Para Inclusion Fours Community Rowing Inc. That's Matt and Tom Discolo are two people in this CRI para program, and they're among the first athletes to compete in inclusion races at Head of the Charles. Today, they are rowing with two women from Potomac, Boat Club, Barbara and Alicia, and a CRI Comp Girls coxswain, that's Evelyn Mace, 15 years old, and the boat is coached by Lucy Battle. So thank you, Lucy Battle, for guiding your crew so well as they come through the bridge.
And on that note, it looks like we have a start to our para inclusion doubles. And I believe we just saw bow number 1, which looks like, if I'm not mistaken, Carrie Connell and Todd Voigt from Portland Boat Club, from beautiful, beautiful Portland, Oregon. They will be no stranger to the rain.
Now, Todd, he won silver at the 2023 World Championship, so just this year in the PR3 mixed double, which means he qualified the boat for Paris 2024. Now, why am I saying qualified the boat and not qualify himself? Well, in rowing, much like canoe and kayak, we qualify the shell and not the individual. So what you will do is you qualify the boat and then you come back to the training center, and then there's usually an additional round of selection, oftentimes not knowing if you're going to the Paralympics or the Olympics until a month or two before. I believe I knew about a month and a half out that I was for sure going to the Olympics.
It is much closer to the event than most people actually think. And can you tell us a little bit about how much of the boat they can actually change? So if this group of athletes qualified the shell, how many people can be changed out?
100%.
There you go.
Unless you go to the Last Chance Regatta, which is available to able-bodied and para-athletes. If you go to that, then I believe that is the crew that needs to be set unless there's an illness. Bow number 3 here in the para-mixed inclusion doubles. That's Grant Verink and Caleb Bresley. Gordon College has sent a competitive inclusion in para crews. And they have a Race the Veil Regatta each year. Bow number 5 here. Looks like Dieter Rosley and Will Stoddard. Dieter represented South Africa at the Paralympics in Rio in the PR3 mixed coxed 4, and he is a rowing inclusion representing the University of Johannesburg.
And they have come a very long way here for that, that's for sure. And it looks like we have bow number 4 hot on their heels. That is Erin Bosgang and Jacqueline Smith from Port Rowing, New York. Maybe also no stranger to the rain. It's probably getting a little cold and gray up there, moving into fall and winter.
Well, and no stranger to this event either, because Smith was a member of the U.S. para team for, 7 years, a 2-time world champion and a 2016 Paralympic silver medalist as well. And Erin is from the varsity boys in Port Rowing.
And as you are reading off these facts and figures, as we are kind of starting to move through these lineups and these doubles, there is no shortage of talent.
No shortage.
And look at this. As we speak here, we have a race here. Bow and stern overlapping. Looks like, am I seeing bow number 6 and bow number 7?
Yeah, it looks like the Australians have overhauled Three Rivers here. Corin de Koenig and Catherine Ross, that's an Australian combination, really showing some nice speed. Look at that length that they're going to try and get their blades in as far back as they can. Catherine is an Australian 4-time Paralympian and silver medalist. 4-time world champion, world's best time holder, my goodness, and Corna de Koenig is a Dutch 5-time world champion. It's amazing that boat doesn't sink with all those medals.
He is a phenomenal talent, and I actually believe is a phenomenal pizza chef. He told me one time. He loves to make pizza. Multiple talents.
Well, athletes and food, really. That was the biggest disappointment of retiring, that I couldn't eat 4,000 to 5,000 calories every day. So I hope everyone has a nice big pasta dinner after this. Looking out here, bow number 9 from the USA. That's Henry Durand and Kate Cavazza from Catawba in Charlotte. Henry and Kate have a combined total of 55 years of rowing experience, both internationally and at their home in North Carolina. Henry lost his leg after a blood clot in 2015 and has since raced in the men's 8 at Head of the Charles multiple times.
Unbelievable. I mean, as you are reading these off, when I think I can't be more impressed. the accolades just keep coming. And it looks like, again, look, we have so many races here. It looks like, again, we will see as we start to get a little bit closer, but we have another shell hot on their heels here. Let's see if we can find which boat number this is.
So what does that feel like when you can feel the puddles of the boat ahead of you?
Well, hopefully I'm keeping my boat out of a little bit of dirty water there. I don't want to get too much chop, but it means that I'm close enough to hunt them down. They are in my sight, and I am going to fire that missile and get my crew excited enough to hopefully pass right away.
Whitney, I'm ready for our Cox single.
Ooh, I'm ready. I'm going to start training. But with the likes of this talent, hopefully we can enter another category where, we might have a better chance of me not ruining it for you.
I really think that bow number 10 here has moved well, as if our graphics are correct. We have bow number 10 sneaking up on bow number 15. So that tells us that they're moving well. Bow 10, Rocky Mountain, Natalie Ormond, and Diana Stroup. Diana rode for Ohio State University. Was last time at the head of the Charles in her 20s, returning now a couple years ago as a master's rower, and Natalia is from Bonn, Germany, and rode on the Rhine. So another river will probably be quite used to the stream and the current.
Absolutely. You're not kidding. And with Rocky Mountain Boat Club, too, down in Aurora, Colorado, it is beautiful. It's near national parks. They row on a reservoir down there, and it is so phenomenally beautiful, but gets really cold in the winter. So maybe this is warm for them.
Well, they'll certainly be feeling warm partway through this race here. The muscles have warmed up. A lot of these athletes will have launched as well, at least a half hour before. Maybe take me through a little bit about what happens before you hit the water.
I was going to ask you the same thing. Tell us a little bit about the warm-up. It's actually a really good time to get your heart rate up just a little bit, and you want to be ever so slightly sweaty, just a touch, glistening, if you will, before you hit that starting line. So you want to have your muscles warmed up a little bit. You want to be stretched out a little bit and kind of ready to hit race pace right away, because you sit in that basin waiting for the go. Well, you start rowing a little bit early. You want to be at speed when you hit that starting line, but you want to be ready to go at race pace. So you don't want any warming up going on during the race.
And I think that's a misunderstanding that novice rowers anyways will sometimes make, is that, and when I coached for Team Bahamas, which, by the way, shout out tomorrow morning, we have Isaiah representing Bahamas bright and early tomorrow from Windsor, Albany Rowing Club, is that some of them thought, certainly not Isaiah, that warming up was kind of wasting energy, but it isn't, because otherwise you're using the race to warm up, which means that if you're just getting going at the halfway mark, what have you been doing for the first half?
Exactly. And it looks like, coming across our screen now, another boat hunting down another one. This is bow number 18, I believe, if I'm seeing that correctly.
Yes, you are. Patricia Mangan and Andrew Mangan.
And who are they hunting down here? They are about to overtake, it looks like.
Yeah, good question. We'll have to squint here, but that's exactly where you want to be, feeling the boat puddles, kind of reeling in the competition, gives you a little kick of energy, and that's a great combination. Andrew represented the U.S. at the 2022 and 23 World Champions in the PR1 men's single scull, and is rowing today with his sister, Mary, who rowed for Nardin Academy for 4 years and is currently a Radcliffe lightweight rower. So love this opportunity in these inclusion events for family, friends to come together.
That's so true. And you know how we were talking just a minute ago about boats overtaking another, and as a rower yourself, you can actually see behind the coxswain over my shoulder as if you were in a sweet boat. But what does it feel like to see somebody coming up on you? So as an athlete, you can see somebody hunting you down and kind of reeling you in just a little bit. What's your next move?
I think you have to have a traffic light moment here. I talk about that quite a lot. And when you talk about race plans, yes, you have a race plan, but you also need to have those red light, yellow light, green light moments there, where whether or not you have done too much. So right now I would be thinking, if someone is coming up on me, okay, well, this is a yellow light or a red light moment. I have to do something stupendous. And you can either feel like the pressure of being hunted down, or you can feel the opportunity of having someone to push off of. You can really see those feet between the two of you, and you can try and break them a little bit.
I love that. Makes you hungry.
That sure does. And I'll tell you who's hungry there. We just saw the Australians on our screen. They look fantastic together, as does the Three Rivers, Stephanie Siddick and Adrian Porter. This husband-wife double is looking to build on their 2022 result and continues to create more speed in 2023. Sounds like they're really doing a good job of defining success, because as a coxswain, you'll know that success does not just mean a gold medal.
No, it really doesn't. And, sometimes it means executing a good race plan. Sometimes it means having a good sprint. Sometimes it's just one part of the race. Every crew is going to have a different focus or a different goal. And like you said, it's not always a gold medal. That's sort of the gravy. You always hope to be in front of the other crews.
Great link there out of Brady Hart, just 17 years old, with Patrick Newman, 18, as they power down, representing triangle rowing very well. On your screen now from Catawba and Charlotte, Henry and Kate. In that great high vis. I'm always jealous of the high vis.
It does look good against this gray here. We do have gray skies, gray rain. The water's a little bit gray, but man, they do stand out in that high vis. And what do we have? Number 13 here. I have, you know what?
Yeah,
Is
Three
that number 13?
Rivers.
Three Rivers.
Yeah, Three Rivers. That's certainly Alicia in the, I believe, stroke seat there. Alicia began rowing in 2023, so very new to the sport, but has taken to it immediately, and she's a visually impaired athlete. So that would make sense that she's in stroke, and she'll have her partner in bow whispering in her ear and making sure that they're helping her with the landmarking as well. But this is only her second head race.
Well, absolutely phenomenal rowing for only her second head race. And we saw bow number 20, Noah Blom. And can you tell me who else that is that was in there? We had them rowing with just trunks and arms, and the bow seat was rowing full strokes, and they were trying to match up, which was really, really phenomenal. Somehow they made that work. That's incredible.
Yeah, bow number 17, that was James Duncan and Emily Yang. And you're right, James is a PR2 rower out of Iowa City. So you're not just matching up different, perhaps, body sizes, whether or not it's a male and female rower, or perhaps two of the same gender with different heights, but you may be matching up abilities in this inclusion event. And just like the mixed doubles, your job is to just make sure that you put the blades in. And as someone who rowed alongside and trained alongside para-athletes at the National Training Center in Victoria, BC, I can tell you, trunk and arms can go fast.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you look at these athletes, and the athleticism that goes into some of these PR athletes is phenomenal. Can you imagine doing a 2K or a head race with just your arms, just your trunk and arms? Unbelievable.
And perhaps a master class in how important it is to connect properly and effectively at the catch. If you can get that blade, row that blade in so that you're getting the pressure on the face of the blade right away, and making sure you have as long as a stroke as your trunk will allow or your ability will allow, you can still apply a decent amount of pressure.
Absolutely. And that's without injuring anything else. So there's so much body control and so much core strength that goes into that.
Bow number 16, David Peters and Erin Jewell. Erin rowed at the College of San Diego State and remained athletic through her 20s and 30s and well into her 40s when she experienced severe dehydration episode and collapsed, crashing into her kitchen island. So her status is semi-quadriplegic, but she came back to rowing during COVID restrictions and continues to find range of motion through rowing.
Can you imagine? I mean, what an inspiring story. I want to talk to this woman and hear more of her story, because this is incredible. Look how they were rowing as they come through the bridge here.
Cassandra and Brooke coming through bow number 19 from CRI. Again, matching up very well despite range of motion. And side by side, this is what we all live for, isn't it? Feeling the boat next to you, having someone to push off of, and if you're going by there, maybe even a little whisper to your teammate of bow ball.
Love it. Love to hear it. Love to say it. Now, as you see we have bow number 14 cutting in actually quite a nice line here on the Elliott turn. So they are staying nice and close to those red buoys, and it looks like she is looking back now, the bow seat, looking back now to see where to start peeling off to go towards those green buoys we mentioned on the other side, looking again through the bridge. And that is where the Elliott Bridge is a little bit deceiving. You don't actually want to follow the direction the bridge is facing. You want to go diagonally through it.
What a great point. And you're right. Sometimes if you just go straight, by the time you get to the other side, you realize, I haven't really done that right. And now I have a couple extra meters tacked on to trying to get back into my line. This is Capital Rowing Club, Ingrid, Clark Marshall, and Ibrihan. And they are, from Washington, D.C. Excited to be racing down the Charles this year. The rain continues, but they remain relentless. Bow number 12, South Jersey Rowing Club. That's Allison and Lily. Lily rows for South Jersey and does extensive work with Alex's lemonade stand. Hit me up. Well, lemonade sounds fantastic right now.
It does sound good right now.
Great way to get some energy after the race, and maybe a great segue into fueling. This is a long race and it's going to burn some calories. So what are you thinking about in the 3 hours leading up to a race?
You know, that's a really good question, because I think it's a little bit different as a coxswain and an athlete. So I was actually going to ask you the same thing about fueling for a race like this. I think it's really, really interesting. For me as a coxswain, I'm going to be focused a little bit more on just making sure that I have my lines, I have my watches set, I have all my timing ready, I have my rowers, and, it's herding cats, so I have to make sure all my rowers have socks and water bottles and oars, and everything is secured. I'm, checking oar locks and boats and rigging and stuff like that. So I'm carrying around little 10 mils and 13 mils and, making sure things are tight on boats and making sure athletes are taken care of, and hydrating at this point. So speaking of hydrating, tell me just a little bit about fueling for this right before we have some of these athletes coming around the Elliott turn.
Well, I always when I'm coaching, tell the athletes that you have to have 100 successes before your boat even touches the water. My race does not start now. This is an afternoon race, which means that I will have been up in the morning doing a pre-row or a pre-run, warming up my body, just getting it used to movement. My last big meal will be 3 hours before the event, because you don't want anything too heavy in your stomach. I will continue to have snacks leading up to that, but that will be easily digestible carbs, as we sit here with, again, James Duncan and Emily Yang doing very well to match each other with their blade timing. I will bring plenty of easy digestible foods in the boat with me. Those could be goos, so energy gels. Those could be electrolytes, right? And making sure that I have enough to fuel myself. And usually, I would say about an hour and a half out, I would also take some caffeine tablets, or maybe even a little bit of coffee. Who doesn't like an excuse to drink coffee? Bow number 21 here from GB, from Sudbury, Sophie Brown and Valentin Pietro.
Coming all the way from GB to tackle the Charles course here. What a phenomenal accomplishment. They look like they're really moving well together. As we come up to bow number 25, it looks like Adrian Berlin and Daniel Berlin.
I have to tell you about this combination.
Please do.
Dan is a visually impaired, the father, rowing with his son Adrian as his guide. And in 2021, they completed the Boston Marathon together. This is family bonding. Well done, Adrian and Dan.
So they are phenomenal endurance athletes together. And what a team, too. Father and son being able to do that together. That's so special.
Very special. Sitting here with bow number 20, Noah Blum and Megan Brundy. This is Noah's second head of the Charles after qualifying for a guaranteed entry in last year's. And Megan is a very familiar face on the Charles and the founder of, and I'm a big fan of this Megan, who I know, Women's Rowers Professional Network. She's a research scientist at Moderna Pharmaceuticals when she's not out on the Charles. And Megan is certainly someone who, whether she remembers talking to me or not, always as a novice spared a moment to give free advice to anyone trying to figure out what this course was all about.
Absolutely. No shortage of accomplishments there. And we can see the rain starting to come down just a little bit more. Lucky for them, they will go under the Elliott Bridge here and again kind of shoot towards that finish line. And they're probably getting excited to be done here. They've been out in the rain for a long time, and it's really getting chilly out there too with a little bit of wind. You can see a little bit of ripple A little bit of ripple on the water. Not too bad yet.
Well, from the safety of our well-lit indoor warm, I'm not excited for the racing to be ending because this has been an unforgettable day as we wrap up the final event of the day. Tomorrow promises to be another amazing event. And I wanted to touch on one thing that just sparked. We were talking about the Women's Rowers Professional Network. There is a clear link between female rowers and leadership skills. In fact, EY Global did a survey where they found that 97% of female CEOs have a background to organize sports. So I want all the people watching at home to think about this. These skills that the athletes, male or female, are learning on the water is so much more than going in a straight line backwards. We're learning about perseverance, timing, nutritional importance, all these things we've been talking about. And right now, Spencer and the Unity Boat Club is showing us what it's all about. Wind, rain, or any type of obstacle, they have shown up today to lay down their best.
Absolutely. You do see some hats on and some hoods up as I think that's Patrick Ward there. He's got that hood pulled over his head there, protecting himself from the rain. And it looks like, what do we have? Bow number 27 here coming into our screen.
Yeah, from Northampton, another Steckel team. And this is a mother-daughter double.
I love these family dynamics here. It makes me want to get out there with my parents, and they would probably never do this. So as much as they love watching rowing, it would be tough to get some parents out there. So it's so cool to see some of these, father, son, mother, daughter, these siblings and parents. And, it's so great to see it out there.
Well, and even just for a fun event, it gives them such an appreciation for what the sport is like. I took my husband out when I first started rowing and got him into a double. And I remember once I was saying something, I had him in stroke, and he turned around and let his hands off the oars and said, "What was that? I couldn't hear you." So we learned pretty quickly about the importance of keeping your hands on the oars. For those of you wondering what I'm talking about, well, that's a surefire way to tip. I managed to save the day and keep him out of the water, but next time I might not be so charitable. Number 24 here. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries. Sometimes you just need to be thrown in the fire, don't you?
Yeah. Bow number 24 as the rain continues down. Lisa and Naharika. Lisa has a visual and hearing impairment and uses her experience to pioneer assistive technology through her work at Perkins School for the Blind. And this is Lisa's second head of the Charles. What an amazing story she has there. She rose out of CRIs and partnered with a longtime inclusion rower, Naharika, who's also rowing out of Brighton. Number 23, Philia Adapted Rowing out of Philadelphia, coming down the course here. This is looking like, to me, like the final bend before you get to Elliott. Is that what it looks like to you?
Absolutely. It sure does. And they're looking quite good, too. Blades coming in together. It looks like we have just arms and trunk. Are you saying the same thing again? We're squinting as they're starting to get a little bit closer to our screen. Arms and trunk?
You're so right. In fact, Maya Rosenberger there is a notable entrance into the rowing scene, and she secured first place in the women's double inclusion event, followed with a second place, and she does compete in the PR2 single as well as being a student at the Academy of Notre Dame, and has participated in the U.S. Rowing Para Minicamp this summer. So new on the scene and certainly making a splash, if you will forgive the boat-related humor. No splashes there as she gets her blades in with her partner, who I wish I had the name of here.
Yeah, I was going to say we are not short of jokes and puns, but if you look at their blades coming in and out together, you actually see almost no check in their boat. It's really, really beautiful rowing here just with arms and trunk. They are really moving that boat along very, very cleanly, almost like putting a little stick through a spoke of a bike wheel. You're just kind of picking it along, picking up speed as you kind of start to gain momentum. And that's exactly what they're doing here, just moving the boat, not disrupting the speed of the boat, but getting those blades in and just kind of picking it along all the way down this 3-mile course.
Well, we certainly have had a master class here, whirlwind the last 2 hours with this inaugural Between Two Bridges. It's been such a pleasure to have you with us. If the rain kept you from coming and cheering on in person, it was great that you got to join us today, and I hope that you'll join us tomorrow on the banks. That's where I will be at. That's where both of us will be. We will be on the course along with Hudson, who joined us earlier on. So please come down, say hello, cheer on, scream, bring your cowbells for another day, the final day of this exciting event. So I have been Andrea Proska. I'm a Canadian Olympic champion. So excited to be here, armchair judging all of these athletes today. And I've been joined with Whitney.
Absolutely. Armchair coaching will be here all day. We're very, very excited. Again, Whitney Powell, international coxswain. Such a pleasure to be here with Andrea and Hudson. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will have a lot more to say, puns included, I'm sure, as well as some phenomenal events coming up tomorrow. So thank you so much again, and stay tuned.